All right. Well, we got a little Facebook message warning, but we made it in time. Yes. Brian was fending off the new Borg queen, which I which I'm sad to say is Fatheree.
He was assimilated,
He was
and
assimilated, and so
Starfleet Boy has taken over the captaincy.
Yeah. When I volunteered to do the work up the notes, I hadn't realized exactly how much time that was going to take.
That's why
Fatheree will enjoy discussing that later on, and being like, "Yeah, that's my life."
Well, I mean, I guess I knew it was going to take a while. I just figured if I don't do it, nobody's going to do it. So and this is the time I can start is now. So I will start now, and if now is not early enough, it will not be early enough.
That is the nature of things. But thank you for doing that, Brian. Yeah. Starfleet Boy, do you want to give us the introduction, or do we want to?
We've got an audience here, so I guess we better get started. So hold on here. I can't believe I'm so nervous about this. I don't know why.
People should indeed know, and I think most of our regulars know that Fatheree is out enjoying the Star Trek cruise and having the best of times.
Yep.
And so we're running off the grid this week. It's crazy. Starfleet Boy is taking over the show. And so if it's a little bit, if we stumble a little, if we're like newscasters looking at notes, don't judge us too harshly. We're doing the best we can.
It's true.
We're gonna make our own Star Trek event with blackjack and hookers.
It's true. It's true. All right, well, welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 180th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek old and new and proud members of the Trek-Sphere Network. I'm Starfleet Boy.
This is Dave.
This is Brian.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Bump.
Sing it along like I know everybody does.
Everyone does. I do it. If you ever hear the Audacity file, the raw files that I send Fatheree, a lot of times I'm whistling and hooting and hollering. It's a really good.
We need an outtakes episode.
we definitely do. I got to say a little shout out to Fatheree. I don't know if you're listening to this. I hear the bandwidth's really, that subspace signal. It doesn't quite make it to the gamma quadrant or wherever you are, but I gotta give him credit. Like it took and you guys, like it took us 3 people and we're not even gonna have images. Sorry guys, maybe I'll pull a Paramount Plus and like show like random images. But Fatheree really does put a lot of work into the show. So if y'all come here and enjoy it, please consider subscribing. Hit the subscribe button. Yeah.
And speaking of which, I'm happy to see we've got some regulars out in our audience already. Ready to talk about Discovery. I'm sure maybe especially hyped to talk about Picard. It is it's going to be a big week because we're hitting up 2 live action shows. Is that a first for Tex-Trek? We've done like animated and live, but
okay.
Obviously, you guys reviewed multiple episodes of Deep Space Nine in a single sitting. But...
Yeah, no, I'm talking about like the fresh stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like this might be. Well, I don't know. I can't say honestly. Like Fatheree just pulls them out like on Tex-Trek number 200. Well, we're not there yet, but like 57, 47. Like
he knows them like a Ferengi knows the rules of acquisition.
It's true. It's true. So we're gonna talk about Disco first tonight, and then we're gonna talk about Picard. So if you all in the audience there, just to know what order we're gonna go in, that's the order. So I guess we should get cracking. Brian did the notes. Thank you so much. Very lovely.
Don't thank me. You haven't seen them yet. They're,
I kind of like
literally first draft made up as I watched the episode. Nothing spell checked or reread.
Right on. So we'll do our best. Again, I think the audience will forgive us tonight if we're not at the the full Tex-Trek experience.
That's right.
After all, I am the Florida man helping to host the Tex-Trek. So.
And let's remember, some Trek episodes with like what is it, Jellicoe or Matt Decker or Evil Kirk taking over. These are exciting episodes. It's fun stuff.
It's great to see how much the new guy's going to screw things up.
So tonight's episode
sounded better in my head.
So tonight's episode of Disco, called Rosetta, was written by Terry Hughes Burton and directed by Jeff Bird and Jen McGowan. This is the second time I think Disco has had a pair of directors doing an episode. I haven't seen that much in Star Trek. Do y'all know of any past Star Treks that did like where it was two directors? I can't think of another instance.
I'm going to say that there have been, but this is not the side of Trek fandom that I have a good head for. Brian?
I have to admit, well, I do pay attention to who's writing the episodes. Directing in television is a crap game, so I just don't pay much attention to the directors unless, oh look, this one's directed by Bashir.
If it's Jonathan Frakes, I notice. But
LeVar Burton, Roxanne Dawson, I know they direct lots of them, but yeah, that's about as far as I go. Just because in television, the directing is such a scaled down job creatively.
I don't know. Are you diminishing their work?
This
is
like compared to what in a movie where
but like there's so much much more movie like now.
Yeah.
All right, I feel like
maybe they've changed things. I am working on how they made television in the 90s idea. Maybe directors have a lot more control. I don't think they have more control in Doctor Who, because I've been following New Who pretty closely, and the directors still don't have a lot of say in anything. They're basically handed a script and said, and here's just barely enough money to make it happen. Go do it.
Would you say a television director? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say, someone's going to tell that camera to spin around as it goes through the hallways. Go ahead, Sohail.
I was just saying, would you say like a television director is probably more of like a technical master, like making sure all the like less of a vision, and since they change from episode to episode, it's more like coming in to give it a little flair, to be like to give it their personal touch, but also to be like more of a technical person, because there's so much involved nowadays with making television. I don't know. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, I'm sure there's less money to hire some technical advisors, so it certainly helps if the director already knows that stuff, because you don't have the time or money to have somebody explaining how the special effects have to be shot to the director. It's much faster if the director already knows how to work with green screen or whatever.
Right on.
So I would assume that there's probably a higher level of technical expertise, and I'm sure the directors try to put as much of a personal stamp as they are allowed to within the limits of the budget and the producer and the time available on the TV show. It's just much harder to
I've got a little follow-up for this. As we go through the episode, let's see if there's any moments where we feel like the direction like shown, and like where we think that the director got to speak a little bit more.
I
guess I suppose I should have asked this before the show starts. What kind of running time are we looking for, given that we have 2 episodes to review?
That's fair.
We're gonna I don't think Fatheree likes to limit you guys from your thoughts too much, so we're gonna say an hour for each, but if we go over, hey, like it happens a little bit, so hang in there. Go get your favorite go get your favorite beverage, guys. There may be an intermission. No, just kidding. I don't think
this is probably not the episode to go into detailed dissection of directors in television, just because
we might save that for
Picard crunch.
I will just say that I do see, and I don't know if this is again just because like I'm very familiar with his work, but I kind of sense that when Jonathan Frakes directs, there is something there that feels very Jonathan Frakes to me. But I also do see that it's not quite as much as when he's doing his like films or whatever. So like, yeah, for him, I can see it. But in general, I think of like Discovery as a whole season. I don't much notice the direction. So, in general, but
if directors made a bigger difference, you would notice from episode to episode, oh, wow, this episode, and sometimes you do. There are episodes of Star Trek where you're like, wow, that felt really different than most of the other Star Trek I've watched.
Shall we dive in with the little descriptor of it and then get first impressions?
Absolutely. So while Captain Burnham leads an away mission to a planet that was once home to the aliens responsible for the DMA, Book and Tarka secretly infiltrate the USS Discovery. And that's the summary. So, Dave, you want to give us a few thoughts about this episode?
So I had to like sort of watch in haste this week, and I don't have sort of detailed notes, and so I'm going to keep this relatively brief. I feel like the big plot we had sort of their visit to the planet is going to be sort of a plot, and then I'm going to call it the Metal Gear Solid infiltration of Disco by Book and Tarka. It was sort of the main B plot with a lot of little sides. I was a little bored by the A plot. We talked about that sort of feeling of dragging your feet a little bit as they get, I want to see the aliens. And I want to find out if they get stranded there Gilligan style. I actually was having more fun with their snooping around and all the little character moments and getting to see why can't I say the name? The comedian Jet.
Tig Notaro.
Tig Notaro's character is Jet Reno?
Yes.
I loved seeing her again. And just generally the infiltration stuff and I kind of thought that I thought that he and Burnham were going to maybe be sort of reunited, or he and the Discovery, but I'm pleased to, I guess, if they're going to have him go off in this direction that I've always had a little bit of trouble buying, where he's just like, I am going to potentially blow up this alien that I know nothing about, never quite felt right for a guy who's so connected to life. But if they're going to do it, this is a more interesting follow through of it to me than the actual attempt to blow it up part. The stuff down on the planet was I thought a little prosaic. It's an interesting enough way to find things out, but I guess I was like, if after all the wait, I want something to kind of impact me, sort of the way the what do you call it? The prophets. What's the other name for them in DS9?
Wormhole aliens?
Yeah. The prophets. Yeah, I guess they say the wormhole aliens. Yeah.
Whatever. In the first episode of DS9, there's some big sci-fi ideas, and it's pretty cool to wrap your head around those. And I think I would have liked a little bit more of that. But finding their alien nursery was still pretty interesting. Anyway, I don't have deep thoughts. I'm going to let myself let the clarity come out as we discuss the episode.
Right on. Brian, what'd you think?
I love Discovery. It's my favorite of the new Treks, and this gave me, a noticeable amount of what I like about the show. There was some cool exploration and both of the external world and of the internal world of the characters that are involved. There were some fun character moments, and there was a sense of adventure about the whole thing, and that exploring and adventuring is fun. So yeah, it kind of felt like they wrote the script and then realized it was a little sparse and tried to punch it up by adding a lot more character moments that weren't necessarily as organic as they could be to the story, to the point where somebody actually, one of the characters even apologizes for bringing up their character stuff in the middle of the plot. But
I didn't notice, Brian, did anybody know what the runtime on the episode was?
It's close to an hour. It's like in the 50. I think this one was in the 50 or something like that. Yeah.
For a while now, I've been saying, like, if they could shave off like 10 minutes or so an episode, I feel like some of their outro kind of character resolutions, when I feel like the main plot is over, do feel a little draggy at times. So yeah. By the way, just real quick, Sohail, if you could shine a light on My Little Magellan's quote about the resolution, or post about the resolution of the conflict,
I saw that too, yeah.
We have to bounce that up there. I'm going to go ahead and read this for the listening audience. My Little Magellan writes, if the resolution of the conflict with 10C is, we shared our feelings with magic space dust, I will throw my TV out the window. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, Brian. Continue with your thoughts.
I mean, I'm not sure I'd be so bad with that ending, but I wouldn't throw my TV. Certainly not worth destroying that. My
Trek, we're gonna. There's in the next episode, and when we talk about Picard, there's smoking on the bridge. There's alcoholics on the bridge, and there's space dust in this. It's a new era of Trek substance abuse.
Yes,
Oh my
yes.
goodness.
It took a while, but the '60s finally reached Star Trek.
I'm trying to see. There's like, guys. There's like an anomaly. Hold on. What's this? What's going on here? There's like some kind of anomaly. Hold on. Let me see if I can figure this out.
Hey, y'all. So, Star Trek Discovery Season 4, episode, was this 11? Yeah, 11, Rosetta. We're continuing with that DMA story. We get to see a lot of cool stuff with Detmer and the away mission, I suppose. I'm actually not that invested in the storyline at this point, but I did enjoy the look of the planet. All those visuals are really cool, and those character moments. Got great stuff from Reno. Got some great stuff with Adira, who I'm a big fan of. So, yeah, Star Trek Discovery continues to be a show that, for me personally, does character better than story. And I'm kind of just overwhelmed with Picard excitement at the time. But I'll say this. I got to watch that on the Star Trek cruise in the same room as both Wilson Cruz and Emily Coots. So I was basically sitting next to Dr. Colbert and Commander Detmer on an episode that really centered on them as part of the away team. So that was a really cool, unique experience that I will always cherish. But yeah, Discovery continues to be a case of character over story for me. But we'll see how they wrap this thing up.
All right, and I'll
Nice. All right. Well,
we've got to destroy the anomaly. I will be the Tarka here and detonate it, and I will carry the moral responsibility and the guilt for destroying Fatheree. No, but Brian, did you have any additional thoughts? That was very cool to see Fatheree invade our space-time continuum.
Yes.
He also happens to be in the chat. I can't listen along, but I want to say hi and thanks for keeping the show going without me. That's all right, Fatheree.
He clearly can't hear how bad of a job we're doing.
No, I think we're doing a great job. Audience, you let us know. But but I have to say, I did love his freaking shirt. What a cool shirt he was wearing. I think he totally was showing off that shirt too, by the way. When we get to the Picard portion of the discussion, there might be something else from Fatheree.
Ripped in the fabric of space.
I did not happen to notice what shirt he was wearing there, and for people who couldn't see that, what shirt was he wearing?
Thanks for reminding me for the audience.
There are people who are not seeing it, even though we're not going to have a lot of visuals this episode. What was he wearing?
He was wearing this shirt that it looked like it had a bunch of different TOS characters, including Captain Pike in the middle. It was a Cage. T-shirt, like a Cage poster T-shirt, if you will. It had the Telosian on it. It had number 1. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I believe I have seen that shirt before, but yeah, that is a nice little deeper cut there.
Yeah.
All right, now Brian, did you have anything else to say?
Yes.
All right.
I kind of somewhat echo your feelings on this, but I thought they came up with an amazingly cool idea for the planet. The core of a gas giant that has had all of its, 90% by volume mass, or not mass, but volume, 90% of its volume of gas ripped away to leave just this rocky core. And that there were these aliens that floated around at the incredibly high pressure lower levels of this gas giant and built structures on the solid surface of the core of this planet. of the core of this gas giant, and all that's left is the structures sitting around, and the atmosphere has been, effectively ripped away. They kind of comment about some atmosphere. So apparently there's some vestigial atmosphere that might be considered a lot of atmosphere if you're on a Class M planet, but is nothing on a gas giant. And I thought, what an interesting idea for a planet. That's unlike any other planet they've ever beamed down to in Star Trek. Arguably, even planet of a whole that's 90% dilithium is less interesting than this planet, which has, some sort of real astrophysical basis of its possibilities.
They never show particular gravitational fluctuations on Trek. I just realized, and I guess you don't want to just have everybody walking around hunched over for an episode or bouncing a few feet higher is just kind of special effects wankery.
Yeah, I think they would love to do the bouncing, except it's incredibly expensive. So unless the plot absolutely demands it, you're not going to see it.
Wow, we gotta Brian, you gotta compliment what my little Magellan says. Wow, listening to Brian's description of the episode is better than the actual episode. Kudos.
Well, thank you.
We might be changing some hearts here tonight.
As somebody who prides himself as being a game master, such things warm my heart.
But yeah, I feel like what you described as interesting, Brian, as presented was not.
That's kind of what I was saying. Why I started with, I feel like you still might have a point, is once we got down there, aside from the giant bones, it didn't really feel that much different than most other alien planets we'd explored. I did love the giant bones. I was like, oh, finally, for the first time since giant clone Spock, we have Star Trek kaiju. We're going to
I do agree.
Kaiju.
Trek has needed giant bones for a while now.
Yes. And they're going to have to bring back clone Spock. They're going to make a new clone Spock to fight the giant kaiju. That's what Tarka's new plan's going to be, is I've got some giant Spock DNA. And
in the event anyone out there is scratching their head, Brian is of course referring to an episode of Star Trek the Animated Series.
Right. And also referenced it, and we find out the fate of giant Spock in Star Trek Lower Decks.
All right.
So I love the idea of that, and I thought the execution was okay, but not great. And it's
I'll back that.
Yeah. I also love the idea that we had these Dyson rings around a star that we did nothing with whatsoever. In fact, I was kind of like, okay, the planet's been trashed, but there are Dyson rings over here. Maybe you should go check out the Dyson. No Dyson ring. We don't give a shit about. I guess they're okay. I guess they're boring. Right. Scotty would have.
They were cool to look at.
Yeah, Scotty would have checked out the Dyson rings, or not Dyson rings. What do they call them? Ring worlds or whatever. Anyway,
they did. Didn't they use some kind of Dyson? They said something like a Dyson.
I usually hear Dyson sphere, and I thought that if it's a ring, it's that you call it something else. But
there's another name for it.
But I'm not
sure.
No,
I mean, in the episode, didn't they say something about it, like the remnents of a Dyson sphere, or like something?
They mentioned it, and then they never bring it up again.
Bring it up again, yeah.
Again, in this episode, there's this undercurrent that sharing the truth, even if it seems like it's going to be awkward or dangerous, is the right course of action. And
you know what, Brian? I must have an aversion to the truth, because my favorite stuff was them creeping around, spying on people from the Jeffries tube, being duplicitous, making deals to subvert the Discovery. And I'm like, finally, it's my people.
Yeah, well, Star Trek might not be for you, man. But even Book has his greatest success when he decides to be honest with one particular person he finds on Discovery that he feels he can be honest with. And that person's like, okay, but I'm going to be honest with you. We're going to do it this way and not your way, but we'll keep yours as a plan B. And, it feels like that was the healthiest interaction Book had, actually, in this episode, weirdly enough, was subverting one of the crew. But yeah, now that person's going to be out hiding stuff from everyone else. And so, yeah, it sounds more and more, it feels like the biggest threat to this mission could end up just being Tarka and Book and the lies wrapped around them could end up scuttling things more effectively than whatever the 10C's weirdness might be. Anyway, so I like the fact that we continue to have that idea. There was also on a more personal level, oh, I'm sorry I came out overshared, and oh, no, it's fine if you overshared. That's kind of the theme of our season. And so I appreciated that on a more personal level too. So yeah, that was my thoughts on the overall episode.
Right on. I love going last because I always feel like you guys have said the bulk of the things that I was thinking. So it's always great. I can just kind of throw in something else. I'm really enjoying Discovery overall this season. I have a lot of faith or confidence that like they're going to stick the landing this time. But I do have to admit that it does feel like it might be a little protracted getting there. Like maybe this would have been the season to try out a 10-season episode. I don't know. I'm not saying that there's a whole episode you can cut out, but I definitely see the opportunity to like maybe tighten up the season a little bit. But I am still excited, and I did like the giant bones. That was like freaking crazy.
Are there 2 episodes left?
Yeah, there's right? 2 episodes left. Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence because with 2 episodes left and us knowing really very little to nothing about the 10C, even after encountering their ancestral homeworld or whatever this might be, I'm like worried. I'm like, oh, is it going to go on into next season? Like, are we going to carry on this story? Like, is there going to be more?
Not.
You know,
I bet next episode reveals it, and final episode concludes whatever the dramatic high point is. But there is the possibility, like with that article I shared that's I don't know, from trekmovie.com or whatever it was, theorizing that the Gilligan's Island reference was actually suggesting these guys are going to get marooned, a little tongue-in-cheek foreshadowing, I guess. And because they've put enough people, like extra people on the ship who aren't there that would provide interesting dramatic plays off of each other, and people said goodbyes and stuff, I'm like, they actually could do that. It seems crazy. It probably is, but they actually could do that if they wanted, is like trap them on the other side of the galactic barrier. So much is made of it.
Oh, and they have to go to the next galaxy or something. That's crazy. You know what?
Discovery would get to continue. They fulfilled the name of the show just by going into the far-flung future, but now they would be the first people to really get a good look around outside the galaxy.
I like the way you think, kid. That's kind of cool because it would 2 seasons here, 2 seasons here, and then let's see where the next 2 seasons, what we do in the next 2 seasons. Maybe Star Trek will finally go to Andromeda. Who knows?
I see Stress-Free K says Tarka could be marooned, and that would be just fine. My coworker is also a Tarka hater. I'm kind of liking the characters in this who are a little duplicitous, and I think it's not necessarily like, oh, I love duplicity, but it's more like I like the kind of something of the classic nature of schemers in drama and just what they bring to the table. There's an energy, so I like him on that basis.
Right on.
Well, everyone being honest with each other isn't nearly as interesting if there isn't a schemer to throw it all into sharp relief. So, you need that contrast. Good is boring if there's not some evil for it to smash against, So.
Well, let's get right into the story here.
Yep.
Brian, since you did such a great job, and I do really mean it, I'm reading these notes and they're awesome. Will you go ahead and read us the first?
I was thinking I was detecting sarcasm. Since you did such a great job, you can fumble through
I know. I sound like a mean teacher always. I don't mean to. It's just like there's a default sassiness in my tone.
Okay, here we go. So Michael decides it is worth the potentially lost time to stop and investigate the core of a gas giant that might have once been inhabited by the 10C aliens. Rillick and Michael argue about Saru being on the mission. Then they, I guess, yeah. Any comments on this bit?
Yeah, what stood out to me in this part was it's interesting because, like, what I like about Rillick this season is that none of her points are wrong. I can see like where she's coming from, and I love that Disco's doing this because I feel like one of the biggest critiques folks had in previous seasons, like they didn't see like an opposition to like these crazy bravado things that Michael or whoever wanted to do. And I like, really just seems like she's got the authority, first of all, but she also presents things in a way that, like, yeah, you can see it makes sense. So I did agree with her. I also thought that whole scene where they were I just love the interactions between the president and Burnham this season. I like that they're kind of like working together, even though they still continue to disagree. But it took them some work to get here. Like when in the earlier part of the season, like when Rillick had asked a question, Burnham was like, "Are you challenging my authority?" sort of, and Rillick's like, "No, I was just asking can I just not ask a question? Like I was just genuinely curious." And so now I feel like they're at a place where they trust each other and they're working together, and it feels real. It feels like it's paid off. They've done these like little.
You feel like it's organic.
It's organic. Yeah, it's a great way of putting it.
And the complaint the president lays down is, in the real world, a completely valid complaint. It would be complete insanity to send both the captain and the XO onto a weird alien planet in any version of reality that we live in. So
especially in that situation.
Yeah, the only way you can even justify it is just they've been doing this on Star Trek since literally the first episode. So
which is why I think I would have like potentially edited that scene out, just because we've been over the endless the debates over whether we want the dramatic captain goes down, or do we want the realistic, but it's true. It's and I think there's a reasonable case to be made for showing it in this one because, well, it is galaxy threatening stakes. So they might be like, we need to at least mention this.
And let's be honest, if Michael and if the captain and the XO end up dead, the president's raring to take over and try her hand at being captain. Shall I move on?
Actually, I'll read the next one.
Okay.
Don't we rotate on the show, right?
I mean,
well, Fatheree had kind of taken over and was kind of running it himself.
We can rotate if you want. I'm just warning you that there might be some missing words.
Okay, that's fine. I'll figure it out. They arrive on the planet core, and Saru starts having scary hallucinations, but he doesn't tell the others the extent of his experiences. They find the massive bones of the 10C from the cataclysm 1,000 years ago. Saru admits he senses the coming of death. That was kind of a cool nod to season 1 of Discovery, by the way. And he's like, "I feel the coming of death."
Brian, you were talking about like sort of telling the truth. It's sometimes it's a little bit frustrating to me, when there's the absence of it, and so like when people should, like, I felt like Saru. I guess he sort of felt like ashamed and just thrown off by it. So again, there's a reason for it, but I feel like in those circumstances he might have said like, "Hey, my threat ganglia just went off again for the first time in years, and it's really uncomfortable, but it means something bad is about to happen." Like, I kind of wish he had just been more upfront about it, because we, the audience, sort of knew that was the case. That I don't necessarily think we needed too much suspense about his visions.
Yeah, I think as I recall, Michael has to pry it out of him. Basically sends the team on ahead, and then she corners him and says, "What's wrong with you?"
I have a question about the compound. So it's interesting, like the compound that he touches outside gives him these like scary visions of the cataclysm. And then later on, of course we'll talk about that, but later on it's a different compound and it gives them a different emotion. And then I think Stamets says they found like 14 or something compounds, each correlating with a different emotion. So I'm wondering, like, we haven't seen the 10C yet, but do they just like, since it's like pheromones, do they like shed this somehow when they're scared?
Right, like, is that like their skin cells or
like, like it's and it's lasted 1,000 years. Like, this compound has sat there for 1,000 years and it's still potent and it still carries these memories. So an interesting concept. It's very, it's very different from anything we've seen kind of before, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, that is actually a pretty neat idea. Although I guess it's a little weird that people just be like strolling around experiencing your experiences with no control. But I assume that maybe the 10C themselves have, like, maybe they just casually can shunt out that sort of stuff, let it in when they want, let it block it when they want.
Yeah. They might only put it out under normal circumstances, under very controlled and minute amounts, but the entire planet being wiped out, filled with these people screaming. This might be spraying this powder everywhere.
They pooped emotion.
There might be their death screams. So the reason it's all over the place is because when they die, they just, as an evolutionary benefit, scream death powder all over the place. So
but they also screamed. They also screamed love powder all over the place.
Well, no, they might have deliberately wallpapered the place instead of. They said, "Well, we could do the lead paint, or we could do the happy buzz drugs for the kids. And let's get kids high." Okay.
Did they make clear that they probably did, and maybe I just missed it? Did they make clear do they know if the 10C would experience these things, or if it was something that, like, you know, essentially humanoids, aliens from you know, our side of the galaxy experience as just a weird side effect? Like, did they just accidentally leave psychic emanations, or do we assume that the psychic emanations are a key part of their culture?
They were very confident, perhaps unjustly, that this is how the 10C communicates, or at least one of the ways they communicate, and that they would have, and in fact, they must have the same emotions as us, because we're all experiencing the exact same emotions when exposed to this chemicals. And apparently emotions are the cosmological constant across this galaxy and other galaxies. And you know what, Spock, everybody's human.
I appreciate it. In the comments, Stress-Free K has reminded us the terminology aromatic hydrocarbons is the term they use.
They do specify it's not psychic, which they're apparently their tricorders can scan for psychic energy now, which is kind of awesome. Though I'm wondering,
I was being pithy.
Yeah. At some point, don't you have to become a quadcorder, right? Because now it does energy and space and biology, and now it does psionics. So that's 4 things, right? But anyway.
Have we actually heard them use the word tricorder? Maybe it is a quadcorder.
I think they tricom badges is what they're calling them now, and that could actually refer to transporter, communicator, and tricorder, all looped together.
This is why they need you. They need you on staff, Brian, calling them out, asking them those questions so that they can push that tech forward.
It would be fun to have some quadcorders just for fun. I did wonder why they made such a big deal about, we're going to waste time on this planet. Why didn't they just send a shuttle down, and the shuttle can investigate this planet while Discovery goes on the way, and then the shuttle, when it has whatever it discovers, takes up into space and transmits to them, these are our findings, and the ship.
Is this just Trek trope stuff?
Probably also, because whoever we put on the shuttle, we wouldn't see in episode 2 and 3 other than on a view screen. So we didn't want to have the episode focus on some characters that aren't going to be there for the rest of the season.
Although if they had done a shorter, like made the planetary scenes shorter, then that would have been a good use of some of the lesser seen characters. They could have sent down a Woshikin or some of the others
and given them a chance to shine. So that might have potentially been a better version. If they only had 2 episodes left, that might have been the way to do it.
I see it also as plausible that, like, going down at first, like, even technology would just kind of do a blanket scan, but like maybe not pick up some of the nuances that you can pick up from like actual first-hand observation, because then Stamets later says that once they found this compound, they sent down the dots, and the dots found like tons of it. So like they once they knew what they were looking for, they went back to the ship, and then they sent the dots down, which is smart. I'm glad they put that line in.
And the dots probably wouldn't have had a aromatic hydrocarbon freakout,
right? To learn that it was even important, like what.
But I do think, like, just broadly speaking, the show is. I mean, it's made it clear that Burnham wants to kind of like get the data firsthand. She's making the calls, so she wants to be the one who the information is going to directly.
And that's that eager scientist in her. Like, I kind of get that. Like, if you're like, it reminds me of, speaking of My Little Magellan, there in the audience, like it reminds me of that kind of spirit of like, I want to see it. Like, I know it's dangerous, but I want to see it. Like, I want to see what this is. Like, I want to touch it. I want to feel it. And I get that. Like, all of the captains, like Picard touching the Phoenix, like it just kind of harkens to those kinds of emotions for me.
Now, they do have a timeline, right? Or they do have a time crunch. crunch.
Crunch, yeah.
Yes,
because
Vulcan,
people are about to start dying
Terra.
by the billions.
Yes.
Right.
So you could argue that that's maybe not the best time to go on a hike.
Well, Michael does put out the argument that we should do our research and then do the thing after we've researched everything we can about the thing, which in a world where people are all like, fuck science, I kind of appreciate the person who does their homework before they go to do the thing. You know, they're not, I'm just going to inject myself with this and see if it cures COVID. No, let's do some science. Then we'll inject ourselves with stuff.
Yeah.
I see Michael Stepniak in the audience says, weren't the comms jammed on the surface? There wouldn't be any way to tell if it was working or disabled. And that's that might have been in there. They had
once they dropped too low in the planet, then they lost comm contact with Discovery,
and
which is why you'd have to leave a shuttle. It'd have to fly down there, do the research, take whatever findings, fly back up into orbit, out of the interference, and then send the signal, the notes they've discovered to Discovery.
They also couldn't even detect their own life signs, which was interesting. So,
they did mention that.
They never really get back to that point. What's jamming the life sign scanners?
I guess it was just supposed to maybe indicate how weird this place was.
Yeah.
I did think it was odd that we've got to make diplomatic contact with these aliens. This planet appears to have been a place they hung out, but we can't scan the surface for life forms, so we don't know if they're still down there or not. So we arrive, we cloak our ships,
and they throw out the phasers,
and they all standing around with their guns out, and I'm like,
that threw me. I was weirded out by them having phasers drawn.
Yeah. And that was weird because, like, even in Stargate SG-1, where they're going through gates into unknown worlds and
with military people,
and they've got the machine guns, but they don't sit there pointing the guns as they step out of the gate and point. They keep the guns handy, but they don't have them in hand unless something actually threatening appears. So I'm like, when the U.S. Air Force is less aggressive in their first contact protocols than you are, you might want to think about what you're doing. So.
I think it's one of those cases where the writers got a little zealous and they were like, they wanted to let the mission team look kind of badass. Yeah. But it was a weird call to me, and it actually bothered me enough to make a note about it. So,
and it might be something that was only it wasn't in the script. That might be the director. There was a comment about keeping the weapons locked. There was a comment about making sure the weapons were on stun, but that line would have made sense even if the guns were folded up on their wrist or whatever, because they're all programmable matter thingies now.
Maybe they were just bracing it in case there were SETI eels roaming about.
I do agree that is a good nitpick. I would have not. I think they should not have drawn their phasers. It's an aggressive stance no matter what. Yeah. Like if I saw someone come in with their hand out and
Star Trek,
thing,
Star Trek has a long history of, like, if we don't know what the deal is, you don't power up shields, you don't power up phasers on the ship until you know what's what. So a little bit of an odd case.
Yeah. I also thought it was odd that the environmental suits we've got, Culber's has white stripes on it because he's medical, and Detmer's has yellow stripes on it because she's operations, and Saru and Michael have black on them instead of red. And I was like, why don't they have red stripes on their suits?
Oh, good question as well.
They have to look cool and badass, and black is cool and badass. The more like Batman they look, the better.
I have a comment on the suits, but I might wait till we jump to the next thing, next plot point or two maybe. And do we want to jump in?
Yeah, let's do it. Go ahead, Dave. Do you want to read this one, or should I just keep reading them? It's fine.
I'll jump in.
Right, Number 3.
They enter a massive constructed structure and speculate as to its purpose. Culber begins to get the scary visions as well as Michael. And I think we might want to just combine this with the next one, because it's all kind of it's shared. They figure out that it's the hydrocarbon dust that's penetrating their suits because they didn't tell their suits to stop it. They change the settings on the suits and the contamination stops, and they detect a chamber with something in it and they investigate it.
I enjoyed the working out of the problem, but again, another thing, I feel like this one I kind of knew before they knew, thing, I was like, all right, guys, like figure this out already. It was like
that's a classic thing. The audience should generally not be ahead of the characters,
right?
Until that moment when it's about to be revealed, and you have that delicious moment when you figure it out, and a few seconds later they get it.
Right.
But if it's going on for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever, it's a dicey proposition.
That being said, great shining moments from Detmer from that piece. Like I did like that, she talked about how like in that one scene, she talked about how she compartmentalizes things and that's how she's able to like give a veneer of coolness. She also talked about her past. She also talked about therapy. She also talked about her trauma. Like it was very cool. Like it was neat to see. And the things that she was talking about are things we've seen, that came before. So it was very.
Was that last season?
Yeah, it was last season. Like, someone was pointing out that this was like Detmer's moments to shine, but she also had a moment last season to shine as well. She had that trauma. She had that disturbing scene at the dinner table where she like was reciting that like morbid haiku about Stamets dying or something. I don't remember what it was, like the blood of Stamets or something like that. It was like very, very dark, but very, very interesting as well. So yeah, I enjoyed the Detmer stuff in it. But yeah, it didn't seem like something didn't coalesce with the. It like lingered a little too long for my for me.
I guess I didn't actually figure out it was the dust that was the problem until they said so, because I just sort of assumed that spacesuits kept out dust, and foolish me for thinking that a spacesuit would be dust proof if it can hold out molecules of air inside it. But so yeah,
I don't think I guessed that per se. It's just that like it had kind of like thematically or plot wise, it had become clear that these visions were kind of infecting them and going around, and like it was getting. I think it was dragging a little bit.
It just felt. I feel like how in like in the Naked Time, it's really obvious like this little red whatever substance, like this sticky substance, like goes on the hand and he starts itching and stuff like that. It's like Saru almost immediately started reacting right when he steps in the blue dust, which no one else stepped in. So like that was like the first indicator. And then, Culber touches him and then he starts having. So I was like, oh, this is so Naked Time. Like, you know what I mean? Like this is like
somebody, you need to overdub that Naked Time scratch effect.
yeah, like that little, yeah, exactly. And then when Burnham's actually, that's when I was like, oh yeah, it's the dust. And then actually there is a plausible reason, because they were cut off from the main database on the ship, so the suits couldn't like communicate with the ship and get telemetry or like process what unknown substances it's coming in contact with. Plus they couldn't even detect life forms, so the suit's internal sensors must have just been like, well, this seems like a similar compound to this, maybe it's harmless, I'm not gonna, or it doesn't even know, like it didn't even see the compound, maybe the compound was just coming through the filter without the suit even seeing it.
I just sort of assumed that the suit wasn't pulling anything in. Did they say anything about, there's enough air in here we can filter the air with our suits?
I missed exactly what the mechanism was by which it got in. I see in the comments that Arthur Lamoureux says the suits should have filtered all alien substances. If this dust was deadly, those characters would have had a quick end.
which probably happens a lot in Starfleet, and we just don't hear about it.
I didn't assume it was filtering anything because they never mentioned filtering anything. I assumed they were like spacesuits where they have their own internal oxygen scrubbers.
Gotcha.
And that nothing on the inside of the suit is interacting with.
Was it something out of phase with the reality, fourth dimensional, something like that?
They
didn't
say that. I mean, that was the only headcanon I've come up with. Is some trans-dimensional, transphasic dust.
The thing I wanted to mention about the suits is that once they got into those darkened quarters, I was like, who designed these suits so that the interior lights of the helmets give you scary face? They all had scary face.
They were. I mean, whenever you put them in put an actor in spacesuit, it's generally really hard to light their face properly. So you're always coming up with stupid excuses to mount light bulbs inside the suit helmet, which makes no sense because you can't actually see out very well if there's a bright light shining in your face. And once again, but because these suits were so conformal, there wasn't a way to get the light around the ridges of the face, so they ended up with a halo of light around the face, but the center of the face was all dark and shadowy because of the way they built the helmets.
Yeah,
and
it was some weird shadows. It was some weird shadows.
Those helmets and those lights will look different next time we see those suits in Discovery.
Well, see, I thought they wanted it.
That didn't look good. We're going to spend some money and fix that.
I figured they wanted it to be eerie and so they, the equivalent of the campfire flashlight under the face, and so that was like an intentional use of the lighting.
I don't think they realized how bad it was going to look
but let's
switched on the lights.
Let's keep an eye on that next time those suits do appear.
Absolutely. Stress Free K in the audience says, I feel like all these clues from the planet will lead us to be able to communicate with the 10C. Oh, that was for Thomas. Sorry. I sometimes... Yeah. I didn't see that it was at someone, but
I do think that that's a good point in general. That this isn't just the sort of episodic nature of it, of them uncovering a mystery and learning a bit about them. It is almost certainly going to be involved in the
finale, somehow. The away team realizes that the structure is a nursery when they discover the remains of the dead 10C pupas. Is that the way to say that word? I like that. Pupa. Yeah, it's a good word. It gives me an idea of an interesting idea of what the 10C might be like, insectoids, I guess. It appears that the 10C value and protect their children. The team exposes themselves to a new flavor of hydrocarbon they find, which includes feelings of familial comfort and safety. Detmer and Saru talk about how this emotion wasn't a big part of their lives. The away team speculate that some emotions are universal and that these chemicals can serve as foundation for communication with the 10C. So that scene really did touch me, but mostly because of the performances. I was pretty moved by just their body language and the way that they were reacting, and I did get the vibe from Burnham. And I just got the vibe that they did feel that comfort or something. And you mentioned earlier, Brian, that maybe they sprayed the walls with this comfort dust or this good feeling security blanket dust, right? That makes sense to me, and I like that. I hadn't thought about that. What my thought is that, and it's sadder, I think, is that the babies died feeling safe. They didn't know, you know what I mean? That they didn't know what was going on. And maybe that's kind of the objective of every parent is you don't want your babies to die fearing and screaming.
Right.
And,
that's super sad, but at the same time, a loving act. And I think it would be an interesting concept to show, that maybe that is what leads them to do whatever it is, their dredging that they do in our galaxy, that some sort of preventative thing. And when they talk about it more overtly or communicate in some way about it more overtly, that would be an interesting and somewhat harsh thing to be talking about. I like that idea.
The world builder in me prefers we paint it with happy chemicals, but the storyteller in me says, "Oh God, that's so cool! Much cooler is that they didn't know they were going to die."
Finally, dead babies. You've taken too long to get there to Star Trek Discovery, but now that you did, you went at it in a big way.
Michael Stepniak says, I'm glad Starfleet Boy said that. This really did remind me of the insectoid nursery and hatchery in Enterprise, right down to the pheromone effects.
Yep. I had forgot about that episode, but you're right. That was one where they pretty much went to the same places.
Yeah. That was a good episode too, where Archer affected also by those pheromones, right? He was kind of nuts. Yeah, he was going nuts. He was super protective and
Let's
crazy.
Put that in the non-existent Gorn eggs at the end of this episode.
Oh, yes, there you go. There are all. Yeah, sorry guys, there's no Gorn eggs, but we're gonna put that one.
Well, there were Gorn eggs. You have to find them on your own.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll mention that one.
You got to do. Hey, audience, you tell us what the Gorn eggs are in the chat, and we'll highlight them tonight.
Man, there's going to be 800 of them in Picard.
It's true.
I did want to say Detmer, like basically all Starfleet personnel, has lost at least one parent before their time. So because that's what makes you go into Starfleet, apparently, is losing your parents early.
That was the other touching thing about this scene, is that it was heartbreaking to imagine that it was just heartbreaking to also speculate and imagine about what led Detmer's father to be such a distant father. Like, I didn't necessarily get the vibe that he was like intentionally abusive, but I felt like he was a broken person after he lost his wife. Like that he just could like maybe
there was something like that.
Yeah, and that maybe like maybe Kayla reminded him of his wife so much that it was hard for him to like, you know, see her in any other way. And so maybe there was a little about that. And then also it was interesting because Kayla has described herself, I'm calling her Kayla like she's my best friend, but like Commander Detmer has described in the past that she's described herself as macho. And now I'm seeing a little bit of where she might be getting that from. Maybe her dad was like a very cool hand Luke, macho type of guy, you know, like distant,
maybe that was how she tried to impress him. Was her attempt to fit in.
To fit in and stuff. So
and maybe to differentiate herself from her mother even.
Right on.
They should follow up on it. Like Detmer should go ahead and get like, you know, an episode in the future that can kind of dive into that a little bit more.
Right. Any other thoughts on that?
Nothing big. No.
Yeah. The floaty things in the big chamber, given that they're drifting at about this air density, means that when this planet would have been filled with when this was the core of a gas giant, those floaty things would have been way up in the sky and not back down at about, you know, touching level for our people, because their density because the pressure on this planet has reduced massively. So if those things are floating at about ground level, then they must have been floating way up in the sky originally, or at least that's what they normally do, whatever they were, floaty things.
I wonder if that will have any bearing on anything.
I think they just wanted some floaty things on there.
Quite possibly.
Speaking of xenoanthropology for a second, they remind me of something really interesting. When I was a kid, I can't remember the book. I'll try to find out for the next Tex-Trek, or I'll post it on Twitter or something. But there was a book that NASA collaborated with some artists, and it speculated what life would look like in our solar system. And the Jupiter life forms were they were like these floaty things that reminded, I used to call them as a kid jelly wobbles. I don't know, that's like something like a kid would say. And
I want to see this book. That sounds cool.
I will find it. I have it somewhere in my closet. I actually own this book. But interestingly enough, the series, the new version of the series Cosmos did it, kind of visualize the same thing. Like, this season, the second season did more of a xenoanthropology type of thing where, well, not really xenoanthropology, but a speculative, like, life on other
speculative
planets,
biology and all that
stuff. Yeah. And it was cool. I saw they did a similar thing with like gas giants and what life would be like on a gas giant and stuff. So I highly recommend checking that out. But that's kind of what it like was reminiscent of for me.
Right on.
On the way back to the disco, Detmer apologizes for oversharing, and Saru says, all our experiences make us who we are. Michael speculates that trauma of losing their home planet is why the 10C... Oh, did I skip one? No, I didn't skip one. Okay. Is why... Sorry, a highlight just came up and it threw me off.
Oh, no, sorry. I didn't realize the highlighting showed up on yours as well. Screwing you up, I apologize.
Fatheree, don't kill me. Michael speculates the trauma of losing their home planet is why the 10C are hiding in the hyperfield. In the end of the in the end, they collect 16 distinct hydrocarbon emotions / memories. So yeah, that kind of wraps up that little A-plot portion.
Is that going to be their like baseline vocabulary? That's the Rosetta Stone.
Yeah. We have 16 words. Well, we have to say anything we want to say, but we only got these 16
words. Oh, it's very
explosion, like dead baby, sad, love,
horrible death. And
horrible
jelly donut. We have jelly donut for some reason.
Guys, lead with baby. No, I'm just kidding. Guys, like, no, but I do wonder if these things are so big, like the kaiju, so Disco's probably gonna spray this shit out into space to like communicate with them.
Shield shit. They're gonna reverse their Bassard ram scoops,
right? And then spray the compound, I imagine, into space, because I can't imagine that like you can't just go up to it and spray it like like it's like
Is this whole season gonna end up being their kind of Darmok writ large? a sort of a meta scale version of trying to communicate, but theirs will kind of also take on this kind of big special effectsy thing if that is how they do it, and I think that might be how they do it.
They're gonna do full Rick and Morty, and there'll be a big nozzle on the front of the ship that'll splooge this goo all over, and then they'll get splooged
Save that for the lower decks.
It won't be a nice mist. It's gonna be something sticky and goo. No, it'll probably be a mist.
So let's get to Dave's favorite part of the episode, the B plot.
Oh yeah. You know what I want to do? I want to overdub over the B plot. By the way, the Mission Impossible theme. Climbing around in the ducts.
Dun, 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 dun.
All right, hit it. What do we got?
Hit it. Book and Tarka secretly beam aboard the Discovery to insert a virus into Zora, or a patch they were calling it, but I think they were calling it. Yeah, but it's a virus. It is a virus. Patch is like you're right. A virus that will let them piggyback on Discovery when it enters the domain of the 10C. They beam over and eavesdrop on a conversation between Nadoya and Tarina. Nadoya expresses frustration, and Michael cautions Michael's cautious, methodical approach. Book wants to enlist Nadoya to their cause. Tarka says fine, but he's continuing to engineering. Book explains his plan, and Nadoya says she will be their spy, but only if Book agrees to give diplomacy a chance. Only if Navarre and Terra are about to be destroyed can Book and Tarka intervene.
I'm sure Book will take that to heart. Meanwhile, Tarka's over here with the detonator button, and he's just like, the instant he sees him, boom.
He's over there like, now? How about now? Is now good? How about now?
He's going to have an old-fashioned plunger that he pushes down. He's specifically going to make it like that. He's going to have the replicator make one.
We already did see how this whole thing played out with the DMA destruction. With the we could wait and talk about boom. No, I'm doing the thing. Boom. So I think it's going to go differently because
I think so too.
They already showed us setting it up, doing it that way once before. So.
This was the Jeffrey's Tubinist episode of them all, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, and they really used it. Like, we had that scene where Book.
Well, there was lots of haptic effects and they little heads-up displays, and they were doing a thing where they would essentially only on their side essentially open up a window.
Right.
Just did with a little digital hand wipe.
Yeah.
And I thought that was both cool, but also a little creepy. I hope that engineers poking around in there aren't just spying all the time.
It's the enlightened 32nd century. They don't do those things.
Uh-huh.
I also enjoyed the right before they beamed aboard, Book is crouching and he's like, well, if you want your head cut off, you can stay standing. It was pretty funny, but it reminded me a little bit of, and there's something in Picard that also reminded me of 2009 Star Trek, but it reminded me of how Spock takes that kind of stance.
Yeah.
Before
I thought that was just ready, coiled to spring to action. That it was like in the Kelvin verse, you don't beam over stiff as a board, you beam over like a panther.
I love that.
That's a shirt I need. Beam like a panther.
I guess something that feels like really, and I'm sure this will come up, but Tarka is like, okay, once we get inside the hyperfield, then we just disable their power source. That's kind of like, okay, once we get inside the United States, we just knock out the entire U.S. power grid.
Right. We're where they have it.
Yeah. That's quite a leap. It's like those little step 1, step 2, then step 3, profit.
Yeah.
It's like
they missed the step in there. It's a little bit dodgy. And honestly, as confident as Tarka, I mean, I know he's supposed to be kind of narcissistically overconfident, but that when you're dealing with the alien race that can wipe out billions, that nobody knows how they think, it's a bit of a stretch to think that you can just go in and do that.
Yeah, I mean,
to in any way bank on it.
It wasn't like when they were wiping out the DMA where they'd studied it, they had a plan, they had the right type of tool to do the thing, to blow it up. Here they're just like, yeah, we're going to get in there and then we'll make something up and it's going to be awesome.
Well, he is a mad scientist, so.
He is a mad scientist. Stress Free K has a nice little point here that's lighting up the chat, which is Book communicating the pain he experienced from Qui-Gon's annihilation could speak the language 10C really understands, an emotional level. Which...
Early on, I was kind of, like a few episodes back, I was kind of surmising that Book, that his ability to sort of like tap into like life forces and stuff like that could be instrumental to the communication. And I think this is that next step of that idea. I think that's a very good point.
We still have the mystery of whatever Bryce and Kovich were working on, which it looked like last episode Admiral Vance was about to like say what it was, and then he gets cut off. So there's still like there's another thing at play that we don't know about. So it's very interesting what's going on.
Do we think there's any chance that that's just whatever the next season is going to be? They're like, well, we didn't want to tell you guys, but we discovered something.
Yeah, there's a chance that might be the case. I see that. I could see that totally happening.
The other thing I was going to say is a fleet of doomsday machines has arrived and is eating up the Delta Quadrant.
We didn't feel we could tell you. We didn't want you distracted.
Yeah.
So someone on Twitter was saying that they wonder if the 10C were behind the Doomsday Machine. Maybe these guys have been here for a long time harvesting things and doing stuff. Because the Doomsday Machine was a planet killer, wasn't it? Just
right.
Like,
well, it could be like, but what if we learned that it wasn't originally meant to kill planets, but to dredge, as their other thing was, and it was like an early attempt, or an automated version that they left running.
That would be epic to tie it into that. That would be really interesting to me. I think that would be cool.
I would like it if I like how the show ends. If the season doesn't, if I'm like disappointed with how it plays out, then I'll be like, man, why they got to bring the Doomsday Machine down with that? That's one of the best episodes ever.
Yeah.
I really like the scene where Nadoye, where Book tries to like confront Nadoye, and she just like pins him against the wall with like a knife, and but like you said in the little,
she did not get punked out.
She did not, but I love her character. I really do. I kind of love Dave's idea about them being stranded afterwards, because I want to see a lot more of this interaction, this play. I do feel like they are setting something up. I don't know, maybe it's just for the season and that's it, but like it
occurs to me that they've already established something of a pretty strong bond between the president and Burnham at this point, of mutual respect, but otherwise, it does reflect Battlestar Galactica of having a president and a ship's captain who in Galactica was much more military oriented. They're more on the same page here, but it does mean that the president will be kind of the pragmatist voice and Burnham the dreamer,
right?
And sometimes the loose cannon. I feel
the
like
Maverick.
Yes, they've. I think it would maybe be a good idea. The essentially what happens next in the 32nd century in our galaxy, like does Earth get admitted to Starfleet and things like that, are kind of bookkeepy details. Like it'd be, hopefully so, or I guess they're part of it, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. I my impression is that both Earth and Navarre still have yet to sign up.
You're right. No, you're absolutely right. You're right. They hadn't come back.
So there's
Navarre came back. Remember remember the episode where they decided
with her mom?
that Burnham would be the special counsel.
Okay, yeah,
like
you're right.
Yeah. So Navarre is back. I think this will be the mission that gets Nadoye to petition for Earth to come. Maybe,
but there's no other big dramas essentially going on in the galaxy right now. They're mopping up the Emerald Chain, and they're inducting new planets, and they're working on a way to synthesize dilithium. And so, like, kind of in some ways, things are going okay there. They're doing what they need to. So it'd be cooler to be off someplace new.
Yeah, right on. So Tarka sabotages. I like to say it like Kirk. Sabotage. So Tarka sabotages the replicators to get everyone out of the spore drive room with steaming bananas. Wasn't that on lower decks? Like the steaming bananas coming out of the. There's a Gornag. I think that was on lower decks, if I'm not mistaken. Then returns to his ship, now leeching on the disco. He finds Tarka kidnapped Reno. Boom.
Yeah. I was disappointed that we just went back to the spore drive room. I was thinking that if we're going to sabotage the Discovery's computer and insert a virus into a place where you have to be in the special room to do it, it would be that weird computer room where Michael got in a big fight at the end of last season. That's supposed to be their server room, right?
But Brian, you have to traverse like 100 miles worth of like empty
they could have had Tarka and Book with Spider-Man web shooters swinging through the void and screaming Star Trek fans throwing things at their expensive television sets.
They locked it in another dimension after that happened, and so you can't get to
notice
the
how
core.
I think this is the first season where we haven't had a single shot of turbo lifts.
No, we haven't.
Around the roller coaster
we haven't.
Turbo lift.
I think Disco probably said, "Okay, people, we get it. We're getting
Good for them. They heard us on the Klingons.
That,
they heard us on that one.
I mean, honestly, like I feel like that area was so big, you could probably fit the whole 10C delegation in that whole space.
Yeah, no, that's what they're going to do. That's where they're going to host it. It's only Discovery has a trans-dimensional turbo shaft that can hold the 10C for our negotiations.
But what do you all think? How do you think Reno's going to complicate things or add to things, or what do you think? What do you think the play is with this?
To me, she's a wild card.
Yeah.
And I can't really kind of guess, which I like. So
you think she might actually join Team Book and Tarka?
No.
Well, isn't that what I mean? What sort of wild card do you mean if she's not going to change her?
Well, exactly what she does, whether she tries to escape, tries to sabotage them, it just changes up the dynamics of the two-man, sneak team. It
pours so much sarcasm and scorn on
absolutely,
them, crushes their wills, and they forgive up.
Yeah, that's possible. They may not be ready for that dry, like acidic sense of humor.
Our friend PJ says this season needs more cowbell.
I agree. I do agree.
I think she might talk sense into Tarka because I feel like they have a very similar dry kind of like but also very, I don't know. Reno seems optimistic, but in a very, is the word pragmatic kind of way. Like she's not like optimistic in an enthusiastic way. She's just very like, yeah, it's going to be all right because the science says it's good.
Right. I know that there is definitely, there are those who are not really enjoying Tarka's presence. If they want to win over audiences, I guess their big shot was, of course, revealing his backstory. But having Reno pull him around would, I suspect, help people.
Yeah, she's really good. I mean, Tarka and Stamets are very similar in a sense. Like they have these they're insanely intelligent. They're these crazy mad scientist geniuses. Of course, Stamets less. Stamets a lot more careful. He's a family man now, and he has a family, so he thinks about things a little bit differently. But remember when Tarka and initially Stamets was like opposed to meeting Tarka because he never acknowledged his work or anything like that. Right. But then when they finally got together, he was like such a fanboy for Tarka. Like Tarka kind of won him over. I feel like that's not gonna happen with Reno, and she will truly challenge him. Like, you know what I mean? Like she won't be wowed by his optimism or like his resolve or like his enthusiasm that I've got.
She's just gonna say something like she's like gonna be like, so you're just gonna let your trauma potentially destroy the whole galaxy.
Right.
She's just gonna say it.
Yeah, she's just gonna say it as is because Book hasn't been really doing a good job, and I get it. Like Tarka's totally playing him on an emotional level. He constantly like refers back to the destruction of Quajon and don't worry, you're going to be saving billions of lives when you do this. You're going to be a hero. Like you're going to this is totally feeding into like Book's damage at the moment. You know, like Book needs to do something to feel like he can make a difference again. And so like, but you know, so yeah, I think it's an interesting mix throwing Reno in there. Regardless of what they're gonna do, she's fantastic. I love the scene. We'll go to the C plot now, where well, two things. First, Rylak asks Harai to be more optimistic around other delegates. Adira talks to Reno about how Detmer handles stress. Reno tells them to hang out with Detmer and go and get to know her, but don't say "I want to be you" because that's creepy. Adira hangs out with Detmer. Hugh tells Michael that he's trying to work out his trauma. So yeah, those are the big moments. But going back to the earlier part of the C plot, yeah. So like, you know, those moments where she was talking to Adira and like all that advice she was giving, I really liked all that stuff. What do you guys think?
It was fine. I didn't dislike it. I don't know if I was. It felt like she having this sudden obsession with Detmer kind of came out of nowhere, but maybe it was there and I wasn't paying attention.
I thought it kind of came out of nowhere, and because we're like, you know, I've been talking about this for a few episodes, because they made the stakes so big this season. I hate to say it, but anytime somebody says something like, I'm not feeling great, I feel kind of down about this, I feel depressed or unmotivated, I'm like, bro, the universe, the whole galaxy is about to get wrecked. And so it's, I like the idea of them kind of having a hero worship for Detmer. I think that's a neat idea, but it didn't feel organic to me.
Something I noticed about Adira is that she's not just awkward. She's like, I don't know how else to say it, but like maybe
or her, they.
Okay, sorry, yeah, I keep doing that. So
yeah,
they
we'll get better.
Thank you. And I had it right, and then I don't know why I reverted.
Yeah, I goofed up too. That's all right. We correct and move on.
Yeah, sorry, Adira. Anyways, when Adira is like, Adira's awkwardness seems like to me like so painful for them in a weird way. Like it really is something that they want to correct or get out of, like, but they like they don't know how. And so I do see that like maybe this will carry on into next season, but I do see like why the draw, like I want to be Detmer, because it's the complete opposite of Adira. Like Detmer doesn't say much. When Detmer does say something, it's always very like spot on and that's it. But I do like that Detmer kind of sees what's going on and gives Adira something to relate to by saying, no, it's rough. I didn't know what I was doing. I was having a tough time. And so that like, I feel like that let Adira go, oh, you know, my this person I want to be like is experiencing the same things as me. You
Basically,
know, like,
everybody has imposter syndrome and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know about, does Tarka have imposter syndrome?
He has narcissism.
You know, this is funny though.
Narcissist, though.
My experience with narcissists is that they are a weird combination of like extreme egocentrism and crushing sort of what do you call it? Insecurities, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, he probably does. It's just you don't tend to see it.
All right. Fair enough. You did skip over my favorite of the synopsis.
Oh, then you read it, sir, please.
Okay. So Book lovingly and longingly spies on Michael.
That's right.
Then returns to his ship.
Speaking of, you know, like when who told was it Jet who told Adira not to tell Detmer, I want to be you.
Yeah.
So speaking, and that's creepy. Speaking of creepy, lovingly spying can be creepy.
Oh yeah,
okay.
No, it's creepy.
So did you guys catch though that Nadoya sent that? So I think Nadoya's playing Book a little bit, like trying to remind Book like what the priority is. Because remember, like Nadoya said, "I'll send you like telemetry." So Nadoya purposely sent that.
First telemetry is you can go here and see your girlfriend.
Right, but like also I think Nadoya is thinking like, let me just remind him what's at stake here. Like, you know, like not, you know, that like what Burnham's trying to do, first of all, to remind him, because like the whole time one of the things that I love about Book is that he's in opposition with Michael, but he is still a supporter in a weird way. Like he's still
right.
always
they're like in opposition, but also in sync.
Yeah. And so I think that's like I think that was a good play on Nadoye's part, is to send that to Book, because even didn't he ask about her? I mean, I don't know. There was I have to watch the episode again, but like that was the vibe that I was getting, is that Nadoye kind of is like, okay, let me add this into the mix of the stuff.
I say directors, I diss directors at the beginning, but the setup of showing this room where everything's going better and Paul saying I actually feel like we have a chance, and then the camera pans through the wall and there's Book looking so brokenhearted and just lost. And I was just love the way they put that together.
I agree.
That was my favorite moment in the whole episode, was where we pan through that wall and see Book, and he's just looking so sad and so lost.
Well, it's always an interesting sort of visual frisson when you have somebody who's like that close physically, but obviously separated by a vast gulf of sort of ideology or intent and loneliness now, and they're like, and he cares, but he can't, he's right there, but he can't be there,
Right on.
I didn't want to skip over my favorite moment in the
thank you, because that's one of my favorite moments in the show too. I was just, I got nerves here, Brian and Dave, but you guys are doing such a great job. So like, I'm so worried that the audience is gonna be like, kick that Starfleet boy out the airlock.
They can't do that because we're coming up on Picard, and they got.
It's true. That's coming up next.
They got to find out.
Let's give our final thoughts on this episode of Discovery. And audience, did you come up with any Gorn eggs for us? Let us know of any that you might have while we give our final thoughts. Brian, do you want to go first?
I don't know if I have much that I haven't already said. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next. I'm really enjoying Discovery. I would love it if they do get stranded outside the Milky Way and have to go adventuring out there. That would be a lot of fun.
I hadn't even thought of that. That's a really interesting and cool idea. Dave?
I also don't have a ton to say. Most of my criticisms are kind of the ones that I've had for a while, which is I would generally like the episodes to be tightened up a bit, and I almost feel like this, this episode could have been like combined with the previous one, or like some a little bit of that kind of thing. Not literally just squash them together, but I would have liked it to be a little bit tighter. But I'm generally happy with or interested in how the chessboard looks right now. I'm interested to see what those final moves are going to be. I like the pairings, and I think it's interesting to have the antagonists of Book and Tarka portrayed in a sort of nuanced way. Both of them, essentially at this point, we've always had sympathy, of course, for Book, and Tarka at least has some level of sympathy. And I want to see, next episode, I imagine we're going to hopefully get some big 2001 Star Trek motion picture style, mind-blowing stuff, along with, seeing how this plays out for our favorite characters.
That would be amazing. I don't really have anything to say except that I was a little bit like kind of I felt a little bit worried about Disco and the Disco fandom, because Picard dropped on the same day as this episode, and I felt like it was definitely the response to Picard is so big that it was kind of like overshadowed Disco. But talking to you guys about it this way, I'm like, whenever the Picard hype dies a little bit and people stumble upon this, I think they're going to enjoy it, like because I've already watched Picard like 6 times, I think, and I've only watched, no, it's an exaggeration, but I've watched it like at least 4 times. And,
all right, Scotty.
Yeah, it's true. How else am I going to
have a problem is the first step.
Yeah, it's true. But I only watched
to be as cool as Detmer is about it.
It's true. It's true. But I only watched this episode of Disco once, and I usually watch it at least 2 times, or at least 3 times before
got crowded out.
So it got crowded out a little bit. But that being said, I do wish, even though I'm glad Picard is here and I've been waiting for it and the anticipation is over, this discussion has rekindled my excitement and anticipation for what's going to happen in the finale. You guys came up with some really cool things, and I'm excited. I'm excited about Disco. So now I'm going to have to like figure out a way get that extra sleep so I can wake up extra early and just watch these things over and over and over again. But yeah, let's shall we move on, gentlemen, to the I guess we should say, should we move back in time now to the 25th century?
Yes, this is our first 25th century Star Trek. I mean, aside from some little flash forward glimpses in the time in Wibbly
Happy New Year.
I saw that noted when I was looking at the memory alpha for this episode, and I was like, oh, it was the first one, first notable one.
Oh, before we fully move on, there was a Gornag. Sorry, I asked the audience for Gornags, and I didn't go back to that. So my little Magellan petitions that the Gornag is the similarity to Soren and Generations that Arthur mentioned. Oh, Arthur actually mentioned it. Sorry. So let's see here.
I believe that was Tarka being similar to Soren.
Yeah, similar to Soren. So yeah, that's an interesting Gornag. Yeah.
I can segue that nicely into our discussion about Picard if you let me. Well, I guess we have to go. We have to do the summary first.
No,
okay. Then I'll do my opening thoughts.
Okay, very good. So just a reminder that this episode of Picard, called The Stargazer, was written by Akiva Goldsman and Terry Matalas, and it was directed by Doug Arniokoski. I hope I said his name correctly. And let's go over here to the summary synopsis. So Starfleet must once again call on legendary Jean-Luc Picard after members of his former crew, Criswell Rios, 7 of 9, Raffi Musiker, and Dr. Agnes Girardi discover an anomaly in space that threatens the galaxy.
Those anomalies.
Why don't you kick off our opening statements, Dave?
Let's see. So, what was interesting?
Oh, wait, sorry. Brian was going to do it. He has a segue.
Oh, yeah. Brian,
yeah, so right.
Segue away.
Segue away. Give us your opening statement.
Right,
we told people it would be a little disorganized.
Yes.
Okay.
We did say that.
So, I think it's not too much of a stretch to say that season 1 of Picard was kind of a thematic and in some cases literal sequel to the film Star Trek Nemesis. Is that fairly? I mean, it deals with the Romulan culture and what happened to the Romulan culture. Yeah. It deals with what happened to Data. It deals with Picard and continues his story. I feel like that's not too much of a stretch to say.
No, not at all.
Statement.
Actually, it's very. I agree with that, and I also thought but also somehow. It somehow reflected all good things, but carry on. Yeah.
So, now this episode, just judging by one episode, but also knowing a little bit from the trailer about what's going to happen in the rest of the season, for season 2 of Picard, feels like it's a thematic sequel to Star Trek Generations, which of course brings us back to Soren. But
nice.
Yes, because we have Generations is the story where Picard discovers that Renee is dead in a fire, and that his house, the place they grew up,
that was his nephew.
Yes, his nephew, and that there will be no more Picards, and that the line is going to die, and that his chances are up. And that we see him regretting the choices he made. Time is the fire in which we burn.
And this time is on our side. Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Little on the nose. A little on the nose.
There's all this talk about whether or not, he says the final frontier is time, not space. Right.
Interesting.
The nature of unmade choices and choices that you can't undo, which was also the thing in Generations. Was Soren wanted, was Picard going back and reliving alternate versions of his past, and Kirk doing the same. So, I mean, I don't know if it's going to be super solid, but at least I kept feeling like this was riffing on Generations more than anything else as I watched this episode.
Well, I know that Nemesis in the fandom has a kind of a low reputation and arguably was kind of elevated by elements of that first season of Picard. Generations, I think, has a better reputation, but is not beloved, maybe. And it'll be interesting to see if this can also reflect that in a way that helps Generations shine a little bit.
Yeah. So that was one of the big thoughts I had watching this. I will also say, after seeing some of the trailers, I figured I pretty much exactly knew how this first episode was going to go. I was kind of even regretting that I'd watched the trailers, because I felt like I so had mapped out in my head the major plot beats for this first episode. And I turned out to be almost completely wrong. There were all sorts of fun ideas that I did not see in the trailers. Maybe they were out there in the spoilers and the boards and this guy, but I didn't know they were in there. I just watched a couple of the trailers and that was it. So I really enjoyed that I got to be much more surprised about this episode than I thought I was going to be. I like that they are promising us possibly Picard romance. That seems to be the big thing Picard never got to do, that they're hinting he might finally get to do this season.
Or find whatever emptiness he has. Maybe it's not romance. Maybe it's some kind of companionship, but without romance. I don't know. Well, I think romance would be the obvious thing.
Yeah, and I think it's whatever unresolved issue he's got, it's blocking the romance. So
he needs one of those real dolls.
Yeah. Oh, they have those. They're called holodecks.
Instead of Lars and the real doll, it's Jean-Luc and the real doll, the sequel to Lars and the real doll.
It's got to be a cheesy body pillow with a bad print of a character
better
on
what
it.
we ended up at the end with Laris and the real doll, but.
It might be Lars. Oh my.
Do you think I guess that's a question I had for you guys. Do you think we'll actually get some Picard romance, or have they? Nope. Laris got left behind. The plot is moving on.
No, I think we will. I mean, you know how it is in these kind of things. If that's been brought up, wherever they go, there will be a what is it? Edith Keeler there, or the Insurrection Babe. Somebody will be down there. I feel that I
throw them in front of a car and they'll get run over.
Even if she is not in this alternate timeline, although she I guess she would still be there. I need to see Dr. Crusher or I Riot before this.
We're on the same. I knew I liked you for a reason. We're totally on the same page here. Also, our friend Aaron Harvey, Geek Filter, says, I wonder if when they fix the timeline, if it turns out he's been married to Beverly for years. That gave me goosebumps, Aaron. Thank you. Like that.
So you think that they could actually recharge some stuff?
Like he's sitting down. The end of the season, he's sitting down at the chateau. He pours his wine. He's so satisfied, and in walks Beverly, and she's like, honey, I'm home.
All the people at the Star Trek novel publishing company who have just finished rebooting the whole timeline to fit with Picard are going to go, what the fuck? We got to do it again. They're going to throw all their papers in the air and scream, because all the work, they just did a 4-part or 3-part novel series to get everything lined up. And then the show goes and reboots it all.
I mean, I guess we have no idea if if whatever they do with the timeline will drastically change anything, or whether whatever they see will just change who they are when they return, presumably.
I have some. So I went through the anomaly and was lucky enough to see episode 2. So I'm not going to say anything, but I just want to say that I'll probably be sitting on my hands a lot during this discussion, because I don't want to mess up and give you guys like a spoiler or something like that.
You are like the Enterprise crew, and we are who's the warp drive guy? I can't say his name. Inventor of Warp.
The Traveler.
Zephram Cochrane.
Zephram Cochrane, yes. who's like maybe don't tell him everything.
Yeah. So you people, you're on some kind of a Star Trek?
Actually, if you accidentally blab something, I'll be like, well, how do we know he did not invent the thing? Also, we'll give it a Star Trek 4 pass.
Aaron Harvey, Geek Filter, is Daniels, because I've seen 3. It's even harder for me.
Oh,
So,
man.
yeah, it's true. Some folks got lucky enough to see 3 episodes. I'm so jealous, but at least I only have to wait 2 weeks. So that's the curse of it. Like the cool thing is that I got to see 2 episodes. The curse is I have to wait 2 long weeks to find out what happens.
That's
So
rough.
it's like it's a little rough, but it's a good curse. I'll take it anytime. Dave, did you have any other things to say for your opening statement?
When I was watching it, I was thinking that the episode almost at first or early on felt like it could have been a denouement to the first season, where it kind of caught you up just on what everybody did afterwards. And I sort of liked that they actually didn't just stay on a ship. Because it's funny, because that's what it looked like at the end of Picard season 1, is that they were going to go off and have adventures as a newly formed crew/family. And then in this, they're like, oh, apparently they did that for 10 minutes and then everybody went their separate ways.
Yeah. It looked like it was about to turn into the A-Team, but no.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that they didn't have that contrivance of Picard just deciding to, go out there and everybody agreeing, yeah, we all want to go do this, because it didn't quite feel like their motivations would do that. Now, there is still a contrivance that converges them all on the Borg anomaly in this, and I can work with that. That was pretty cool. But anyway, it's real quick, short version. I had quite a good time with this. I was not the actiony opening put me in my it's more of that Kelvin influenced stuff that I'm tired of seeing on Trek TV. But it was just hard not to be won over by Patrick Stewart, by Whoopi Goldberg, by seeing John Delancey, and seeing all that again, and what I thought were actually some pretty measured and nuanced beats, especially about his loneliness, where it wasn't just like, oh, this is a thing, but the way they talked about it, where he, kind of tried to justify it. And he's like, well, I'm hardly alone, and he but was clearly holding something back with Guinan. I thought it was interesting that thing seems to be some fear of basically becoming his parents. And I think that sounded like, to me, like it was going to be reflective. I think that's a new plot point, right?
Yeah. We get the hint in Family. I think we get a hint that it was a rough childhood, because of how Robert's so kind of mean and kind of
right. But the parents thing.
Yeah,
was
but
new,
they
right?
kind of imply that Robert is the son of the father. That
right.
He walked in. And so you get the idea that Dad was a bit of a jerk.
So this will almost certainly be an expansion on those themes.
Yeah.
But I think everybody probably knows at this point, because Patrick Stewart's talked very candidly about it, that there was domestic abuse in his family. His father abused his mother, and he spoke very candidly and movingly about it, and he's written about it. And I wondered if they were bringing that in, at his behest. In any case, I think it's a good thing to explore. We've seen captains and their being torn between duty and romance in the past, and I think this adds that's such a kind of hard thing to relate to, because it's like the notion of somebody being so devoted to especially to a captaincy, is I feel like a Horatio Hornblower kind of old school idea, and so I think having that be how he describes it, but not the truth, that the truth is something a lot more personal and having to do with his childhood, perhaps. That is an very interesting plot point to hang its hat on. And so that interested me a lot. Beyond that, I didn't like Rio smoking on the bridge. But we'll talk about that a little bit more later.
I found out, by the way, I don't know if you know, it's a synthagar. It's a synthagar.
Really?
Yeah, it's a synthagar. Apparently, they don't say it on the show, but someone's. I
saw
forgot
him
where
light
I saw
it at some point, but I never saw any smoke from it.
Right. So yeah, it's interesting. It's weird.
It is an odd thing. Like somebody, there is a smoker on the staff, because like Raffi smoked in the first season, or vaped.
She was a vapor. She was more of a vapor.
Yeah. Anyway, but I was actually very distracted by it while it was going on. I was like, no, wait, there's secondhand. Don't do that.
I figured they had a way.
And then I felt like I was missing some plot points here and there.
That's really funny.
I do think that there's probably some future tech involved in keeping the smoke away from everyone else.
No doubt.
It still was distracting. I still was like, every time they'd show him with that thing in his mouth, I'd start thinking about the cigar and not about the episode and not about what anyone was saying. And I was like, this was cute once, but I'm getting tired of it being.
Let's cut back to it when we get to his captaincy of the Stargazer. I did want to cite my little Magellan talking about Picard's backstory. Says maybe that's why Picard is uncomfortable with children.
Yeah, that
works really well.
Yeah,
I think so.
Really well. Yeah.
I guess on that point, and
shall we dive in?
Well, I guess.
Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, but we still have to hear Starfleet Boy and his whatever he can say, and any thoughts you have, Brian.
Yeah.
Well,
thoughts. I guess I want to address the domestic violence thing, but I don't know if we should hold off on that for the moment.
Yeah, let's wait till we get in. Let's get to that scene on that one. I'll just say real quickly that, like, highly anticipated 2 years between season 1 and season 2. I think you guys know, like, I'm a huge Picard fan. Like, this is, as much as I like the other series, like, this is my series in a way. Like, this is the, like, Next Generation era, but specifically Next Generation and the Next Generation films, like, kind of like were very important to me. They like were monumental in shaping the individual I am, like my like my all these things, like, and Picard, like, I often used all of them, not just Picard, but the way they all interacted in my work environments. Like I felt like the storylines and the interactions and the resolution of conflicts like helped me so immensely in just real life. So this show, these people are so precious and so dear to me. So it's very hard for me to be very, very objective about the show. I just love it. That being said, I thought Star Trek Picard season 1 was the bee's knees, and then I saw this freaking episode and I was like, oh my God, like how, like I wasn't expecting it to be leagues above the tone or the vibe, and this just felt so, the scale of it just felt so like cinematic. But then as PJ pointed out in the chat, like there's a very strong like visual design language connection, and it's because so many folks came back to work on the series to the TNG era that was absent. And I'm okay with that. Like, I didn't mind. We weren't in Starfleet much. We only saw the fleet come in at the end, and a few hints here and there in offices at Starfleet Command. But it was like the thirst for it was there in season 1. I wanted to see the ships. I wanted to see what Starfleet was doing. I wanted to know. And this like answered it, but not just answered it, but like they were just like, here, we're going to give you a tsunami of Starfleet. Like, here you go. Like, you're going to drown in it and you're going to love it. And that's how I felt. Like
the Stargazer is the visual metaphor for that. Not 2 nacelles, but 4.
4. Exactly. So to me, this was like
on her nacelles.
So it was a little slice of heaven to see this opener, and I feel like it's, I've watched it not 6 times, but at least 4 times, including the premiere.
A little slice of the Nexus.
A little slice of the Nexus. I'm using that from now on. That's amazing. So yeah, I was totally into it, and I haven't tired of repeat watching it. Like I'm gonna, after this, tonight, tomorrow, I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch it all through the weekend. I was just really enjoying it. I want to see every little detail. I want to pick apart everything. I want to like see what I can find. I'm just so into it, and I haven't felt this way, in a long time about a show.
Over in the comments, I think Geek Filter made an interesting thought. Said season 1 was too melancholy to me. Like, hey, remember that show TNG? Yeah, me too. And he's like, now in season 2, it's like Return to Star Trek: The Next Generation, already in progress.
Nice.
I thought that was a nice way of putting it.
I guess I almost found myself pushing back a little in that there was so much kind of
too many callbacks or nostalgia.
Yeah, callbacks and nostalgia porn for me. Not so much that I didn't enjoy it. I did enjoy it, but I did feel like I think I might have liked this a little bit better if they'd taken the nostalgia porn from an 8 to a 7. I think
Brian,
it's like a little.
It's like I don't even know you.
Discovery is my favorite of the new Treks.
That's
which
true.
Is probably
That's
the
true.
least nostalgia porn of all of this new generation of Trek.
I'll say this, and I know we should jump into the specifics of the episode, but I don't feel that the nostalgia porn particularly particularly came at the expense of the story in this one. That these things, I think they needed to start a little slow and get the emotions on board. They needed to check in with some characters, but it did feel like I felt like they had a story to tell in this episode. So.
All right.
All right. So let's jump into said story.
Let's dive right in. So we open with a bang. The security team is summoned to the bridge. They're bouncing around the walls. There's explosions. There's like shaking. There's like security alarms and all kinds of chatter going on. I added to your plot point a little bit.
Here I was worried that I made it too long, but apparently it wasn't long enough.
And when they arrive on the bridge, they find something is shooting down everyone. Picard is there and orders the self-destruct. Boom, we go to the credits. And by the way, a spectacular new opening credit music. They totally changed the credits, and the music was like different too. So yeah, what did you all think of this?
I mean, I was expecting something weird because almost every episode of season 1 opened with like a flashback or a dream or something. So I was expecting, a flash forward. And that just felt like, I wonder if they're going to do every episode this season's going to start with a flash forward. I don't know if I'd like that. I kind of got tired of that gimmick back when it became popular in my adventure fiction. Stargate, I remember particularly beating it to death, but yeah, it was fun. It did have me wondering, why do they have the security stations so far away from the turbo lift? Surely you would want the place where all the security guys are sitting around waiting for a call to be right next to a turbo lift rather than we've got to run down these big long hallways before.
Answer, Brian, of course, is that it's cool to watch security people run down corridors. It just is. You're like, oh man, the shit's going to hit the fan. These guys mean business. But also, I was nervous because of this, because like I said, all Star Treks often have cold openings with some sort of action or something bad happens to a ship or a planet and sets the thing in motion. But I was, again, the sort of Kelvin style of sort of slightly lunk-headed action just has me worried about it. I'm cautious about it happening. But I did kind of like they had great effects of the sort of the gravity moving around and pulling them to the wall, or maybe that was just a jar of the impact.
No, I think that's what was going on. I think there was some stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And the taking the turbo lift, and then just the instant the doors open, it's just all hell breaks loose. It's a good cold open.
Yeah. I also love that we were seeing it from the perspective of basically these cadets, sort of they weren't cadets, but they were younger, scared. They were scared. They really focused in on the Vulcan officer especially, and I thought that was interesting. And he was and I love that he was very Vulcan. He was I only know he's Vulcan because Elnor is the first Romulan in Starfleet, so it's safe to say that kid was a Vulcan. So, but anyways, he's as he's going through this, he's analyzing what's going on, when the tentacle shoots out next to him and stuff like that, and you could tell he was very Vulcan. I loved all that. Also, there was a Andrew Hayes in the audience says, I think I was hearing a warning alarm that came from TOS movies on that cold open scene, and it's true that that was totally
the sort of, and it still the classic kind of red alert,
and also
graphic.
You heard the and then the red alert graphic is it's a modernization, but I feel like all the shows are now using, I mean, it is a cool graphic, but that was the TOS films from Star Trek 2.
Yeah, motion picture onward.
Yeah. And so TNG
it was in motion picture. I think that graphic
I associate it with Star Trek 2, but I thought it was somewhere in motion picture.
I think it's in motion picture. I'm pretty sure Star Trek.
I trust your knowledge of motion picture, Brian.
Yeah. I did want to say this about that graphic.
Yeah.
The one they keep showing is round. And that was made because back in the old bridge from Star Trek's 1 through 1, 2, and 3, they had round screens on all the stations. So they made a round graphic that would fit that screen, even though I don't know if you ever actually see it on any of those screens. But then In Star Trek V, they came up with a square version to fit the square screens in Star Trek V. And I think they used the graphic again in 6. And it also shows up in The Next Generation in Best of Both Worlds. And I think once or twice else. So they have a square version, but they Discovery showed up with the round version when they brought back the New Generation. And now you only ever see the round version, even though they're all being shown on square screens.
It's iconic, Brian. It's iconic.
But the square one is iconic. It premiered in Star Trek V, and everyone loves that movie.
Terry Matalas is listening to this, and he's like, "Okay, guys, can you quickly re-edit the graphic now so that it's square?" And no,
I by the way, it also looked better as the square.
It is updated though. They kind of rounded out some of the edges on it too, and so it is an updated version of it. But I really love it. I mean, it's iconic. It is iconic. I used to have that on my computer wallpaper, like when I was a kid. Like, you know, it's something
cool.
that.
But did you have the round one or the square one?
I had the square one. I had the square one.
Jumping back to the general bridge chaos, I was amused. In the comments, Geek Filter says, "How can it be a ship under attack without flamethrowers?" Referring to the Star Trek Discovery's inexplicable explosions of fire.
I almost commented on the flames in the Discovery bar because I just feel, is that what they do with the fire when they're not venting it to the bridge?
It's got to go somewhere. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. All right, let's jump in to the episode. Why don't we?
Yeah, I guess on the opening credits we see all these like 12-sided dice, D12s rolling around.
Is that the greenhouse? Is that the greenhouse Picard was in?
So that's left.
It had a hex type structure.
Those hex things are left over from last season when they were. That was to illustrate the fractal neuronic cloning. What Soji. So like you see, it starts as 1 and it splits into 2. But yeah. So they kept some elements of the credits, like the glass shard falling and stuff like that, and all.
Well, they seem to have integrated the breaking glass into this new plot line. I was just wondering if these new D12s are actually going to turn out to be Omega molecules.
That's what Q's going to turn
always the Omega molecules.
Well, the Borg love Omega molecules.
They do.
That was their holy grail. Maybe they're on the run from the Omega molecules after screwing up with it.
I'll tell you what. That Omega molecule must have captured so many hearts because that's all people talk about is the Omega molecule. I'm like, dang, you guys! Like, I'm Voyager's a blind spot of mine. I'm only on season 5. I didn't give Voyager a fair shake when it came out, so I'm discovering it now for the first time.
No. Quitting Voyager partway in is a completely fair shake. There was large hunks of my life where I kind of like, why am I still watching this? But that said, the Omega Directive is an awesome episode.
It is a good episode.
It
was a great episode, and 7 is what inspired me to go back and watch it. I have to know more about. That's the reason I went back, is seeing 7 and Picard. But yeah, so next up after the credits, Picard has a good day harvesting grapes. It's the end of the harvest, the end of the season. Laris puts the moves on Picard, and while tempted, he pulls back. He says his duty prevents him from ever settling down with someone.
What we really should understand from this is Picard needed the blue pill. His eyes kind of looked down like.
Dave, he's in a synth body. They fixed all that. They said,
no, it still ages. They said.
That's true. It's true.
He was really upset when he found that out. Wait a minute, you deliberately programmed it.
I knew that moment when they almost kissed that it wasn't going to happen, but I thought it was going to be one of those where like a communicator interrupts him, and I hate that. I hate that contrivance. So I was actually quite happy that it was of his volition. He chose not to pursue it.
Yeah, and I like
that's going to be important thematically, of course.
Yeah, because it's because really he's holding his heart for Beverly, and we all know that, and that's why he kind of chuckled. He kind of chuckled nervously because he was like, "Oh no, darling."
He's holding his heart, but he's afraid that he will. I mean, I think this will literally quite probably come to pass, but he's worried that his internal stresses and temper or whatever is that such that he could one day hit her. Yeah. And that's why he won't. He's never been able to like really.
Oh, that's
pursue
great.
it.
Yeah. I mean, it's dark, but it's great. Like that's.
I
true.
mean, yeah, I think that is what I
Wow.
assume that we are going to continue to return to those childhood images, and we are going to find out that is why he cannot maintain a relationship, is because he associates relationships with the first one he ever saw in his life.
Ooh, I got chills.
No, that is. I think if we were going to go to Beverly, then there would have been like a shot of a picture of Beverly on the fireplace mantle, or Guinan would have alluded to the lost chances with Beverly.
We are in an era that they like to kind of drop surprises, though, and sometimes it's a little inorganic that way, but they do like to do it.
I don't think anyone would have blinked if there was a picture of Beverly on Picard's mantelpiece, though.
You know
after, they had Brian, the freaking stone from that Deep Space Nine episode.
They did have that. It's true. Hey, you gotta hide your love away. Like sometimes you gotta hide that love.
Actually, that would thematically make sense. If he is trying not to think about her, he doesn't keep up those kind of memorabilia. The work is what he tries to make, what he lives for, even if it's not fully satisfying to him.
Well, no, I think you're right on the romance. I'm just not thinking Beverly's where we're headed, because I think there would have been some foreshadowing in this, a little hint of that there's going to be some Beverly involved in this story. When we were talking all about it, especially with Guinan.
I just feel like
could have alluded to Beverly quite easily.
However things go, I feel like that, and I know that Starfleet Boy knows at least one more episode than I do. But Riker was kind of, his presence in the first season was kind of this shot in the arm a little ways into it, and I feel like. Beverly could be that person as well in this season, in which case it would be better in a way if we kind of stopped thinking about her, got focused on the time travel stuff, whatever is going on, and then suddenly she comes in tearing it up in her spaceship. He sees an alternate universe version of her, and his heart breaks because she's this evil dictator version, or I think that her sudden presence could be like a real energetic moment in the series, and that's why I think they might be holding out.
Yeah, I'm not saying that she won't show up. I'm just like last season wasn't about Riker and Troy. I don't think this season's going to end up being about Beverly.
We'll see.
But I would love to be wrong. I would love for Beverly to come back and have some sort of romance thing with Picard. That would actually be my preference. I just don't feel after watching this episode that that's where we're headed.
Listen, I think you know me, I'm holding out for Vash. The sexy Tomb Raider girlfriend.
We at least have Q. It would actually make more sense to bring Vash back, because Vash and Q were a thing.
True. I actually did have a halfway thought of the sort of the old fan pairing ship of Q and Picard. Just because if they ever wanted to consummate that, here's an opportunity to have both Q the antagonist and Q the secret person he desires.
My little Magellan says, I saw some exquisite acting from Stewart in the episode that reminded me of the TNG days. And then PJ says Stewart was vibrant. Also, there's some conversation going on. Braxton seems to think there is a picture of Beverly and Guinan on Picard's wall. PJ zoomed in on an image of this, but I saw that image in Guinan's bar, just like Geek Filter did. So I saw that someone zoomed in Guinan's bar. She had, among her pictures, there was one of Beverly and her, which is from the cast photo. They just cut out, who did they cut out? I forget who's the person. I think Troy. They cut Troy out. So it's just but that might be intentionally saying, but that might be it's a Sears photo anyways. You remember when they did those weird background, like those cloth weird background? It's like one of those kinds of
I need to see him turn to the side and staring off into space with hands on the shoulders behind him. But okay, so it's at least floating around.
Yeah. I did think Laris's husband, Jaban, I thought it was odd that they killed him off screen.
Did they? I couldn't remember how he died in the previous season.
Yeah, he didn't die.
He didn't die. Yeah.
Okay. I thought that there was some attack that I'd forgotten or something.
There was an attack. There was a perfect opportunity to have him die saving Picard. and they don't kill him off, which makes me feel like they really didn't know exactly what they were doing for season 2 when they wrote that part of season 1, because that would have set up things very nicely for what they wanted to do with season 2 if Raban had died saving Picard in season 1, and it would have gotten him out of the way instead of mysteriously dying off screen.
Was the actor just not available, maybe?
I think they wanted her to be able to hit on Picard, and that would have been weird if the husband was there.
I guess that's true.
Which, mind you, they
can be polyamorous.
The Romulans are, according to the writer, the guy who wrote the showrunner of Picard, said they form trios. That's how Romulan marriages work, according to his blog entry. So it wouldn't have been that weird, but maybe it would have been too weird for audiences. I don't know.
Sure, Trek hasn't crossed that bridge too often, like in a up close and personal way.
Yeah. So, but it would have been fun.
There was that interesting thing too, that she talked about how Romulans honor their dead lovers by loving more deeply the next time.
I really like that.
Yeah,
I thought that was a
really cool.
neat addition to the Romulan lore, which they'd already done a lot of good stuff with. But yeah, I was into that.
Yeah, and I like their chemistry a lot. That whole opening scene to me was just like really delightful. I liked seeing Jean-Luc happy. Like, he was so happy at that harvest. I mean, he's like popping grapes in his mouth. He's like he's like, he's smiling. He's wearing a freaking fedora and a turtleneck. I mean, he looks great.
He's got his record player out in the vineyard.
There. It's like, I did like the little touch, and I don't know if this was in season 1 because we did see the vineyard and we did see harvest, I think. But I like the little touch of that they beamed the grapes off the vine. Like, the grapes are just transported.
I noticed
off
that
the
while
vine.
the thing was
that
going.
cool.
It was right as the sort of picker sort of vehicle or their storage vehicle was going by. It was cool. It was a neat way to show how you could have a like futuristic automated thing, but that still allowed for sort of like hands-on inspection and interaction and stuff like that.
We got an update from Geek Filter talking about that alert. So TMP's alert graphic is literally just alert in text, much like graphics in 2001: A Space Odyssey. So Nick Mayer must have seen that and said, "Can you doll that up a little bit? Can you add some things on the side and maybe things going into it? I don't know. Like, let's do something."
I will say,
Nicholas Myers is all about the blinky lights in the movie things. Like, he would just jam that stuff behind every single shot he could.
I always remembered it from when I was a kid, when I really bonded hard with Star Trek 2, and I was
those
like,
atmospherics are just like,
it's very iconic in my head.
Yeah, it's true. Also, we have a lot of folks like talking about Zhaban in the chat. They have to do something with Zhaban. This alternate timeline can easily bring him back. It'll be pretty lame to be like, yeah, he died a year and a half ago. Anyways, I personally think, yes, it does feel like a hand wavy type of like, oh yeah, Zhaban's dead now, but it doesn't bother me that much. It's not like a big deal. Like, I'm like, okay, I do love Zhaban and I miss him, but I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Let's see where it goes. But yeah, we don't know. There's a timey-wimey season. Lots of stuff can happen. So
yeah, I don't have a good sense yet of how much of this world will, like, it's like mirror universe stuff. How much is it going to reflect our world but be some twisted version of it, and how much is just going to be different?
Maybe you'll have a better sense next week.
Possibly. I don't know. Probably not. I doubt they'll. Is it possible they'll continue to develop it, you think?
Who knows? I don't know. So this triggers a flashback. This whole event of him and Laris, and her coming on to him. So this triggers a flashback to Picard as a child with his mother. He dreams of exploring, and Mom says she's taking him to Paris. She promises they can paint the windows and make a place for the two of them. We have flashes of what appears to be Mommy being beaten by Picard's dad. Mommy tells Jean-Luc to look to the stars when his parents fight. Like, to imagine our voices are so distant, to look to the stars. Have you all ever seen the movie Immortal Beloved? The movie, I know this is a little tangent, but the Immortal Beloved, the movie about Beethoven, it's like a biographical film about Beethoven. Gary Oldman plays Beethoven. He gives a stellar performance. I highly recommend it.
You know, I'd heard of that name before, but I don't think I even knew that was what it was about. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, genius movie. But there's a scene in the movie where the kid, Beethoven as a kid, runs away from exactly that, his parents yelling, and like we find out that the reason he couldn't hear is because his father used to hit him across the head, you know, on his ear and everything. And he runs off and he lays down in a pond. I'm sorry to give this away. It's not a big spoiler.
Go ahead.
It's also a 20-year-old or 30-year-old movie. So he lays down in a pond, and the pond is crystal clear, and like the water's still, and it's reflecting the stars, and he's floating, and it looks like he's floating in the stars. And you hear that's how he gets the inspiration for the Ninth Symphony, you know, the big choral piece or whatever. And this reminded me a lot of that kind of it gave me vibes of that, like Jean-Luc's mom like encouraging him to escape, to run away in his mind, at least, you know, look up, dream.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, like things like that.
I wouldn't be shocked if that, like, if not was a direct inspiration, was bouncing around in the subconscious of, you know, one of the writers when they kind of came up with that.
I'd love to know,
you know?
yeah. I feel like Akiva Goldsman definitely could have seen that movie or would have liked it. Maybe even Terry Matalas. So yeah, I'm gonna ask them on Twitter. Maybe they'll answer me. Who knows?
That's not going to be a question a lot of people have asked. You should absolutely do it.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I have a question I want to ask you guys, but I'll let you finish your thought.
Oh, I was just gonna say also, the other thing I liked about seeing Kid Picard and seeing this, like, what is it, like the room that they're in? It's like a what did you call it?
A greenhouse or something.
A greenhouse,
right?
Yeah, like this greenhouse set. I think that's where Robert. I think this is gonna come into play a lot, because I feel like I get the vibe that that's where Robert and Renee perished. Referencing Generations, because in the future, when he's looking at it, like when he picks up the little rose stained glass or whatever, it looks like something happened there and all that, and they didn't bother to repair it. And a lot of people leave things where their family members died as a memorial or something, like, you know, so it makes sense that he would have repaired Chateau Picard, but like maybe left this as like a memorial, and he doesn't go into that greenhouse anymore or whatever. And it's like, because it also has other memories for him, like it was his escape, but it's also where his brother and his nephew perished. So there might be some interesting things that they tie into that.
I will be disappointed if we make it through this season and there's no comment on, oh yeah, my brother and nephew burned to death on this property. You know, that really needs to, if we're going to be doing a delve into Picard's childhood, I feel like that needs to be mentioned at least.
Here's the thing. My little Magellan in the comment says nothing looked burned. I didn't pay close enough attention to really notice.
I didn't get the impression
I was thinking
burned, but it certainly had all the glass blown out for somehow or other.
In general, like, unless it's going to be a major story point, they probably don't want to overcomplicate it with plot threads from other Trek outings and movies, unless they really intend to build directly on it. And you could with this, but I think that they may want to focus on the specific trauma with his parents, and so I can see them not mentioning the other stuff.
She does. Yvette Picard and Maurice Picard are the name of the parents, by the way. But Yvette mentions that, like, she kind of there is some kind of like a line drawn, haha, no pun intended, because she's very much like looking after Jean-Luc, and she mentions like your brother and your father can toil away in it looks like there's a division, like, you know, and we do see that that Robert was a bully to Jean-Luc, you know, until family, like he's like, I bullied you because you needed it, you know, like, and all that kind of stuff, like, because maybe Robert sees him as very soft and very like whatever, you know, whatever, like Robert's probably like, you know, more like his dad, and Jean-Luc is more like mom, and you can see that there's this already, she kind of has a resentment for her older son, you know, like, and you know, and so I think family the whole family is going to come into play, not just mom and dad. I do think we will see.
I would like that to be the case. I would like there to be moments of downtime that are not just flashbacks, but also him talking about it in the present, maybe. I'd like to see him discussing it with any given crew member that has something that, you know, is that it would be interesting with.
Remind me again, in the first Traveler episode, they get thrown out into Thought Defines Reality space. And Picard sees, was it his grandmother?
Well, I don't know. So what is maman in French? That's how I always got the impression that that was the grandmother, but I think maman is like mom. I don't know. I'm not sure. Some folks are saying that's his mother. Some folks are saying that's his grandmother. I've heard both. My impression as a kid was
I figured it was clear in the episode. I just couldn't remember my.
I don't know. I have to remember. Someone in the audience, if you know, let us know. But I remember thinking as a kid, seeing that was the grandmother. I didn't think that she was old enough to be Picard's mother because, like, you know, I mean, she seemed very elderly compared to him. Whereas, like, usually there's only like maybe a 20-year difference. Typically, I think, right? About a 20-year difference between kids,
20, 30, something
20,
like that.
Yeah, something like that. It seemed just a bigger age difference to me, but I'm not sure. I don't know if it's explicitly said. I'll have to go and research that, but that's an interesting point. If it is the mother, though, she had a very French accent in the TNG episode, and she has a very British accent in this. Now,
well, she was speaking English in the TNG episode, whereas in Picard, she's actually speaking French, and the translators handle it.
My little Magellan says, no, it's his mother for certain. Picard was 59 in that episode, so she could be in her 80s. I don't know if it's explicitly stated. I got to look it up, but yeah, I still have my doubts about it. But regardless, Jill, Jill, my little Magellan tweeted out earlier that canon be damned. I love that the mother has an English accent because it actually would go a long way to explaining why Jean-Luc himself has a British accent. So, very cool.
I was just trying to figure out. My recollection was that it was mom, but I wasn't 100% sure.
I can't
just
remember.
wanted to know if so we have seen a version of this woman before.
Yes.
And admittedly, it was pulled from Picard's imagination and not necessarily a historical fact.
Yeah.
But so I guess I'll be the guy who's going to go there where no doubt lots of people on the internet already has. Are we okay with humans having domestic abuse, domestic violence in the 24th century on Earth, where everything's supposed to be kind of fixed on those issues, or at least they tell each other.
Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine, I think, went a good ways towards showing that there's always cracks.
Yeah, but did we see any crack quite as much as a man beating a woman who's married to on that level of crack?
I think the fact that their family is probably unusual, even in that future, in the sense that they are kind of trace back their lineage. They clearly like to call out their old world connections and their family ancestry, and I suspect that's not super common to have that level of connection to it. So I think
they did mention that they weren't allowed to have a replicator in the house, which is the equivalent of not having a microwave today.
Right. So I think in that sense, I think it works. They're a family that's not meant to be quite your average family, and indeed maybe holding on to some things from the past. And this would be a vestige of the really kind of nasty patriarchal kind of approach.
I forgot that we did see Maurice Picard in Tapestry, and my little Magellan Jill points out that he did have an English accent, and Boatrek is saying it was Yvette in TNG. So that's interesting. I like this comment from Aaron. He's dressed like a newsie from 1899. So old school for now even.
We could assume that was just in fashion at that point.
They're all dressed like newsies from 1899. It's kind of true. Yeah. I do want to say that it would have been funny if they were like, we don't want replicators, but they actually had a microwave.
No, that would be great.
That would be hilarious.
I would absolutely do that.
Like that they're totally accepting of a microwave.
And a Mr. Coffee.
A Mr. Yeah, the works. It's true.
Y'all keep talking. I'm pausing my video for just a second so I can feed my cat. We've gone on long enough. I have to pause.
While you do that, I'm gonna play the incoming. You'll still be able to hear or no?
Yes.
Okay, I'll play the incoming transmission from this anomaly that's coming through here.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so here we go. Here we go, guys.
Hey, y'all. So, Star Trek Discovery Season 4 episode...
Sorry.
What's up, y'all? I am so sorry I can't be there with you, with everyone else, but I'm still on my away mission on the Star Trek cruise, which has been a total blast. I had so much fun this week. I'm sad today's the last day. I'll be back in the mainland tomorrow. But in the meantime, I do want to share with you all my thoughts on Star Trek Picard, Season 2, Episode 1, The Stargazer. Or is it just Stargazer? I'm not sure. I haven't had time to comb over this episode and analyze it like I normally would do. But I'm just going to give you some general thoughts just off the cuff. I fucking loved this episode. I thought it was so cool. The 25th century world they created, that they presented here, that feels so much like a continuation of the 24th century we got in the 80s and 90s. I loved what they're doing with Rios, with Raffi, with Soji, with Eleanor, with Jurati, with Picard. So that was all fantastic. And this story that they're setting up with this alternate timeline, I'm a little worried because I don't want to leave that, the Stargazer, that fleet, that academy, all of that really cool stuff. But I'm very eager to get back to it eventually, and I'm curious what they're actually going to be doing now with Q, bringing John Delancey back, using the Borg so prominently. So, yeah, I loved Season 1 of Picard, but I so far seem to be loving Season 2 even more.
All right.
Okay.
All right, so now we heard that was good timing, right? Like it worked out really good.
No.
And I had time to switch my badge over here, so I'm wearing the correct badge for the era as well. So we're good. Shall we move on to? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, let's move on.
We'll move on to the next point, which is Lara says she's going to leave Picard because it would be awkward. Picard gives a big speech about the importance of taking chances and seizing the day. Eleanor is acknowledged as the first Romulan in the Academy, and Picard is Chancellor of Starfleet Academy. I can't speak, you guys. Sorry. Chancellor of the Academy, which is also my role, by the way. So he meets Commander Raffi. Raffi reveals her relationship with Seven is turbulent. Picard gives Eleanor a book written by Spock, and the cadet leaves with Raffi for the Excelsior.
You have to say that sounding like Stan Lee.
I think you're on mute, Dave. Well, while Dave figures out his mic, nope, we still don't hear you. And you're not mute on this side, so something's going on.
How about this?
Yay! We got you back. All right.
All right,
go ahead. What were you saying?
The one thing I was going to mention was that they said the first full-blooded Romulan, or full, I think that was something like that. Yeah. And I was wondering if that was because I don't think it's ever spoken, but Saavik is supposed to be part Romulan, part Vulcan.
Oh yeah.
Saavik is half Romulan, and then there was that 1/4 Romulan that is uncovered, who's claimed to be 1/4 Vulcan in the Drumhead with Admiral Sati, and she reveals you are not 1/4 Vulcan, you are 1/4 Romulan. Yeah. Dun, dun, dun.
I guess that's a Gornag. Technically, there they
look at that.
They made a point of using those exact words. Okay. Anyway, but moving on though.
I felt like the continuity nerd went into the script and absolutely rephrased that line so that fans like us would not be screaming and burning down things in the streets.
You know what?
Screaming and burning down things. Ah!
I hate to say it, but I thought Picard's speech was kind of weak. Just not one of the stronger.
It wasn't the greatest speech, but I also felt he's talking about himself. He just doesn't realize it.
So, right. I mean, thematically it made sense, but as far as the great speeches, I was like, eh.
I did like the revision of the uniforms. I never quite liked awesome. More of the way they ride the collars on the uniforms from season 1 always seem to ride up and just look incredibly uncomfortable. And these uniforms actually look like they could be reasonably comfortable as any Starfleet uniform. So I like the revision to the uniform. Was that double-breasted coat thing Picard was wearing also supposed to be a uniform? Or did he just put a fancy Starfleet badge of unique design onto his regular old suit that he dug out of his closet? I would think if you're Chancellor of Starfleet Academy, you'd be expected to show up in dress uniform, but that didn't quite look like a dress uniform to me, so I was uncertain.
Is that what Kovich is? Because there's a design connection there. Kovic was like kind of doing stuff with the academy and the cadets. He wears a black suit and like a tie, and Jean-Luc was wearing like a naval kind of like a pea coat, and like, you know, so like maybe that's like a tradition that Jean-Luc started, as the Chancellor of Starfleet Academy gets to wear like whatever the hell he wants to.
I mean, this guy is so tied. Picard, as he actually says, no, I can't have sex with women. I have duty to fulfill. You know, that you think he'd jump at the chance to put on a dress uniform and strut around in a dress uniform for a day.
Interestingly, he wears a uniform for the speech, right? And then he changes.
That's right.
Yeah, he does wear a uniform. He wears the uniform. He leaves without the uniform on, puts on the uniform for the speech, and then takes it off. So maybe he's just done with the uniform. He's like, I only want to wear it when I have to. Like, you know?
I don't know. Which feels weird given how obsessed he is with Starfleet, but maybe he never got over that. He's still smarting from the sheer fucking hubris of it all. There was a lot of discussion back when it came out of the flags behind Picard when he's giving his speech, but we didn't have a lot of context for what that scene was, and now we do. So now it really kind of seems like that there's a Klingon flag and a Bajoran flag and a Ferengi flag up there with all these known Federation member flags. So it kind of feels like the Klingons and the Bajorans and the Ferengi all joined the Federation, I guess.
Oh.
I mean, it's not just because those species are people from those empires are represented in the graduating class, or there would have been a Romulan flag as well, and there didn't appear to be a Romulan flag. So it's they're not always
great with their continuity stuff. Like, it could mean something or it might not.
Yeah, but they're trying really hard this season on Picard, and they got a bunch of the old guard nerds to come in and help keep them straight on this stuff. So I can't help but feel like that was more intentional and not just random. But it could have been random. I don't know.
It is intriguing and weird to me that the Klingons are just absent after season 2 of Discovery. Like, we don't see them we see them in Lower Decks. Sorry, we do see them in Lower Decks, and I guess you see a Klingon in Prodigy maybe. But from live action Star Trek TV, there's no Klingons after season 2 of Discovery.
Yeah,
which is
we really don't know what's up with the Klingons.
The Klingons,
which. So I have definitely noticed that absence.
That does seem like the kind of thing that they could make a kind of a big deal out of in the 3rd season.
Yeah.
Some things that stood out to me that I have questions about is like, so this is a little later, but it pertains to Raffi. So she's like a commander. Yet when the Excelsior arrives on the scene later on, like, she's the one who hails and says, "Hey, Excelsior's here to help out." Like, is there no captain on the Excelsior? Can it, you know, like, it's a,
I mean, in modern naval parlance, from what I understand, a smaller, less important vessel can have a commander.
Oh, I like that.
Serve
okay, see, I didn't
as
know
the
that.
captain.
Okay. I made a big hoot about it. I was like, Raffi should be a captain.
Well, positionally, she probably is called captain by her crew, but her rank might only be commander. And Excelsior is literally 120 years old at this point. It is probably, quite possibly, the longest serving ship in Starfleet history. Certainly the longest that's ever been mentioned in canon, as far as, continually in service. And even if it is, it looks like it might be a cadet training ship, like much like the Enterprise became in Star Trek 2. It is a really old ship, so it might make sense that they figure that a commander is fine for a ship like that, especially if it's just got a bunch of cadets and they're not going to check out Genesis related distress calls.
Here we have some a little update. Geek Filter Aaron says, no, it is a new version, not the same ship. That was specially stated by Doug Drexler.
Okay. I mean,
so, yeah.
I've seen some big time ship nerds on YouTube who said they examined it up close and said the serial number was the same or something like that. And I was like, okay, I guess they know what they're talking about, but I guess they don't. I retract the
I don't even know if we could
okay.
even see the serial number because I tried to look for it too. Now, certainly in the Academy scene, so interestingly enough,
I mean, it's still an Excelsior class, so it's still pretty freaking old. Like,
I was hoping it was going to be. I was hoping it was going to be the Obina class that we got in Lower Decks. Remember, we got that cool.
The
Obina class,
not quite Excelsior class.
The not quite Excelsior. I was hoping it was going to be that ship, but it's all fine. But interestingly, right after the speech, I found it pretty cool that so they're all the cadets seem to be getting their assignments right away, which I thought was like a real interesting and peculiar, and it made me think I think they were mustering the fleet already. Like they already knew about this anomaly out there, so they were just like, oh, let's get the fleet ready or something. It had that vibe of this 2009 Star Trek where you
wouldn't necessarily think they would all be doing it at the same time otherwise.
Right, exactly, yeah.
But again, I don't know if that was just for drama, so they could name drop some ships and we could hear the Grissom.
For sure, yeah. There. I loved hearing that, by the way. But yeah, that's the vibe Grissom. That I got was it wasn't at that point, it wasn't a level 10 anomaly. It was more let's just muster the fleet, get everyone on standby. Let's get everyone ready,
Having watched Star Trek, there must be a Starfleet starship encountering a weird spatial anomaly.
That was
pretty much every given day.
Yeah, it's true.
Somewhere in the in Federation accessible space, some starship has just found an anomaly. You can't muster the whole fleet every day.
No, but I'm thinking so what happens is is the scene where the what was it, the Akira
Plus, Picard
class
doesn't seem to know anything about it, and he's watching all these people.
Well, that's what I'm saying is maybe they're not quite, you know what I mean? They're still in the, I don't know. It just gave me that vibe, but you're right. Those are good points. But when does the scene happen where the Akira class ship gets knocked out when the anomaly first appears? Is it before this or after this? I can't remember off the top of my head.
I'd have to look too. I was wanting to look because I wanted to comment on how the ship gets knocked out, the Akira class, but and then I was like, I don't remember when that happened. I forgot to put a note in my in my synopsis about that.
Well, regardless.
No, wait, yeah, it's when they find it. So yeah, it's let's see, it's after Picard meets Guinan.
Okay, so then it's not even okay. Then I take back the thing about the mustering the fleet.
Yeah, so it hadn't even shown up.
It hadn't even shown up yet. So never mind that. Take it back. Take it back. Well, the only other thing I want to say about this scene is it was very touching to see Jean-Luc give Elnor the book from Spock. Also because it ties in very nicely to a role-playing game I'm a part of, so that was really cool.
Very cool.
I certainly thought of the GM when I saw that scene. I was like, hey, are they eavesdropping on our role plays here?
I was frustrated, and they never say the book title, but I did manage to in HD read the title. So
it was called, what was it called? The One and the Many,
and the One,
the Many and the One, or something like that. Yeah, interesting. So Spock wrote this book, and I hope Dr. Una McCormick writes a version of it and releases it, because that sounds like a cool book to have. So it's pretty neat.
Honestly, the book publishers are kicking themselves that they already did the Spock autobiography, because they probably just would have called it that.
Yeah, it's true.
That's and released a deluxe hardback version that replicated the look of that book. But
any other thoughts on this scene before we move on, guys?
Let's see. They did a little bookkeeping. They revealed that if we were talking about this, that Raffi and Seven were a little bit on the rocks, or a little complicated.
I think it was complicated. So,
yeah.
The audio drama that I listened to also plays somewhat into that, though it looks like it takes place several months before this story starts. But
yeah, I don't have any strong feelings other than that there was a lot of neat bits of nostalgia in there, and it was cool to hear Sulu's name drop too.
Yeah, the USS Hikaru Sulu, that was pretty cool.
I thought it was odd that you've got the Hikaru Sulu, you have the Grissom. Like, shouldn't it be the Hikaru Sulu and the Grissom, or drop the from both? It was like almost the same sentence, and it was inconsistent, and that bugged me.
Yeah, and typically when talking about starships, you rarely hear the Enterprise. They usually just say Enterprise, or Excelsior, or like you rarely hear the.
I'm a the man. You got to have the. It's not real Star Trek if you don't have
so you're all about the Batman. Should we also release the Star Trek? Is that the next Star Trek? Is it the Star Trek?
Sure.
Anyways, so carrying on. So Picard goes to a bar in LA to meet with Guinan. She tells him that he never allowed himself to get too intimate with anyone, and that he's afraid to explore his own heart because of some unknown event. So
unknown to Guinan, known to Picard.
Known to Picard.
I didn't write that as clearly as I should have.
This scene was so delightful to me. I loved seeing Whoopi Goldberg back as Guinan. I think she nailed it. I love the bar. I'm so jealous of the folks living in LA who get to see. I like Aaron Harvey saying Enterprise is normally the Enterprise. Well, it's the most famous ship. It's done a lot. It deserves but everyone else just gets like their name dropped. But anyways, I love seeing that bar. I'm so jealous of Aaron and others who are in LA who get to go to the pop-up. They've recreated they've actually taken the set and recreated it at like a pop-up, like a restaurant bar place, and they've and so people are gonna get to go there and see all these like details up close and personal, and have a drink maybe, and who knows what else. They're gonna have some entertainment and stuff like that. I looked at flights. I totally looked at. That's how crazy I am about Picard. I looked at flights and I was like, "Can I make this happen?" And no, I can't. Not this season. But yeah, it's pretty cool. The other thing I really liked was, just like a few of the things like that she drinks tea Earl Grey hot. I love the scene where, she asked him, "Do you want top shelf or hooch?" And he's like, "Hooch, I think." Like it was just like of course.
He stepped outside his world.
I love that it was on number 10 Forward Street. And
so
then
she picked the address of where to put her bar based entirely on the name of her bar on the Enterprise.
I think Guinan has the pull to get that street renamed also.
Oh, well,
just, like it's possible.
I'm not sure if that's less silly or more silly.
And then, well, why don't you guys tell me more about what you think while I pull up a special thing that Aaron pointed out on Twitter, and I'm going to share that in a second. But what did you guys think of this scene?
It was great seeing Guinan again. I noticed she's much more casual and less solemn, less Jedi and more drinking buddy. And
that makes sense. Cool, Picard is more Patrick Stewart now.
Yeah, but Picard is older. Guinan is, statistically speaking, the same age. So,
that was actually one of the... I liked both that and, of course, how they handled it with Q, where it was essentially she chose to age, or at least be that age while she was hanging out with him, to put him more at ease, to put the fast agers at ease.
I kind of felt that Guinan doing it then undermined when Q did it later. I was like, you should have left that for
maybe
for Q. But I was also just fine. Whoopi Goldberg got old. We get it. She doesn't look that much older. I can headcanon it. We don't need to address it directly. But it was great seeing her again, even if she was playing a slightly different version of Guinan than before. But that was fine. They've seen some shit together.
Eagle-eyed Aaron Harvey was saying, for those folks who are asking, because doesn't Janeway say that like part of LA sank during the Great Hermosa earthquake of 2047? So he found out, like, on this little plaque, the historic district of Ford Avenue, it does say Greater Los Angeles area was not destroyed, only damaged during, that should be during, he corrected it in the caption below, damage during the Hermosa quake of 2047. So So there you go. Now we know.
I will have to tell my wife, because she was like, wait a minute, I thought Los Angeles was destroyed. That was actually lived through in one of my role-playing games. They went back in time and got stuck in the Hermosa quake of 47 and had to live through it.
The other thing, though, for folks are saying, like, no, she definitely says it was destroyed or sunk into the part of LA, sunk into the sea or whatever. In Family, Jean-Luc's friend Louis is doing a project where he's trying to raise part of the seabed. So it's very possible that later on, after 2047, between then and sometime later, they were able to restore Los Angeles back to its previous state. And I can't remember where, but I have some kind of weird memory of either reading it somewhere or seeing it on one of the Star Trek episodes where they mentioned that Earth was also just restored to a... Someone asked, like, why Earth doesn't look so different, like with tectonic movements and all that. And they said that humans got so advanced that they were able to restore Earth to an idyllic looking state, like a nostalgic looking state. So maybe they also filled in the gash in Florida that was left there.
Did they leave that big waterway going through Florida from the from the Zindi attack, or did they fill that in?
I think it's great to have a waterway. You could speedboat to Orlando, like why not? Like take advantage of it. Like it's a good thing. But yeah, that was interesting. We have some funny comments. I bet Guinan aged faster from drinking hooch every day, says Boat Rex. And Sorry and Brandy, who knew that was hooch? so yeah, very cool.
I don't know enough about alcohol to really know what hooch is, but
I get the impression
moonshine,
that hooch is
right? I guess
it's moonshine. It's like another word for moonshine,
but
right?
Weren't there brandy is a different than a moonshine, isn't it, or is it not?
But like there's different levels. You can call something a brandy, and it's made in like more of a moonshine kind of way rather than like the refined way of making a brandy. Perhaps like it's not a Louis XIV's, in other words, but perhaps that's what she means or whatnot. But that was a delightful scene. I did think it was very interesting to touch on this new thing where she says, like, I like how she was like, well, I've seen that look before. There's a lot of shorthand between them that I'm sure we'll like understand more about later. Like they have a kind of understanding that we don't quite have yet, and I like all that stuff. So that was neat.
I see that in the comments, Fun Will Now Commence says, initially Guinan was not acting like Guinan. She didn't have the Guinan talk, but when they sat down at the table, she was more Guinan-like. Which I think that kind of roughly fit how I read it. And you could read that as Whoopi Goldberg kind of getting back into the role, or that she's changed a little bit, but like fell into her, admittedly, she's not, it's not specifically a Starfleet bar, is it?
No, I think it's just...
Yeah, so that'd be a very different vibe that she's probably been living for a little while now than Starfleet ship bartender. That would kind of make sense.
I know that we're never going to get it, but I want to flash back to Guinan watching Picard's interview from the beginning of season 1, where he disses Starfleet in front of everyone. I just want to see the look on Guinan's face when that interview went. I'd love to see the look on all of the TNG cast face. For what did Geordi, what did Worf, what did all of them think?
I think Guinan would be happy that he was speaking his mind. I don't think she would have been shocked or anything.
Yeah. But
some of the other people.
She might have widened her eyes a little and been like, "Oh, he went there." Like,
I can see that.
Like that kind of thing.
Very cool. You novel writers, you get on that and give us a scene where we get to see what all the other characters.
Let's get into the B plot, guys. So Starfleet finds a tear in space-time opening. Up with the Akira class, that scene. 709 fights off raiders, and we learn that she owns La Serena and is doing mercy missions for the Fenris Rangers. We learn that she's merged Rios various hollow programs. They discover the anomaly. And then we have, of course, the scene where Soji and Jurati are celebrating the lifting of the synth ban. Jurati reveals that she was cleared of killing Maddox, but then she is called away by Rios and beamed up we discover Captain Rios commands Starfleet's new USS Stargazer and is going to investigate the Rapture.
Rupture.
I said Rapture because I can't read right now. It does say Rupture. I said Rapture,
Okay.
but it is kind of a rapture. No, I'm just kidding. But
Picard, it ends up being one.
Yeah, it's true. So, anyways, yeah. So awesome little setup and excitement. I have to say that I'm really intrigued because Soji's the only one left behind, sort of. Yeah. So I'm intrigued.
Do we think she's going to come back?
I think so. I mean, the trailer kind of suggests it, right? Doesn't it? Like, I feel like there's scenes in the trailer.
If we're heading into this alternate timeline where stuff started deviating back in the 20th century, there's a chance nobody ever built nobody ever built Soji. So, but I mean, I guess there's a really good chance none of these other people would be born, and somehow they're all born anyway. So,
well, in the scene after the climax, the self-destruct, when Picard shows up in the alternate chateau, there's a synth there. It's hard. What's his name or something? I forgot what his name is, but anyways, I might be giving away.
Yeah, but wasn't Soji was only built because of the synth
That's right.
ban.
That's right. So yeah, she may not exist.
Yeah,
I don't know. But anyways, in the trailer, it seemed to show her scenes of her that we didn't see in this episode. So I feel like there's probably more of Soji to come, just based on the trailer. So I don't know, but I will say that it's interesting that she, because I also wonder, will she have if it's okay, this whole fleet gets blowed up, right? But there's still, it doesn't mean the whole timeline got blowed up necessarily. So maybe Soji finds out. Maybe we're going to be going back and forth somehow or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. Yeah. There's whether that also whether Beverly shows up at some point might take into account whether we see that present.
I just got goosebumps. If we go, I don't think this is going to happen, but if we go back and forth, it's his crew investigating his death in and the circumstances of the explosion, and that's what we keep. But it's not gonna happen. They're not gonna. that's just too headcanon-y. That's just too fan servicey. I think. I don't think it's gonna happen. But who knows? It might happen. If it happens, I'll go crazy.
But they could call in a medical forensic ship.
Yeah, the Pasteur. I mean, I would love to see an updated. I would love to see an Pasteur design.
That would be dope.
Cool.
It would definitely be weird if Picard left Starfleet, but Beverly stayed there. That would be unexpected.
I liked Seven's return scenes, but I was more interested in Dr. Girardi's scenes. Mm-hmm. She was just she's a little bit more of a kind of a fun wild card. Liked seeing her being awkward and drunk, and then having to kind of, I don't know, be a goofball on the bridge while still somewhat inebriated.
Yeah, she was great. I'm really glad that they addressed the whole thing. I had forgiven Girardi in season 1. I totally picked up on the fact that she was brainwashed and made to be temporarily insane. But there's a huge segment of folks that are no, she needs to go to jail. It's awful. And I'm where is this coming from? Star Trek's always been about rehabilitation, not imprisonment. I don't understand what you're talking about.
It's coming from the land of misogyny.
Yeah, that's where it's coming from.
It's all over the place in other pop cultural areas I visit. It's even kind of that leads to a line in, I think, this trailer for the next Doctor Strange movie, where the Scarlet Witch is talking to him, and she says something like, "I break the rules, and I'm a villain. You break the rules, and you're a hero."
You're a hero, yeah.
And this is a very common thing that there's some, whether consciously or unconsciously, a lot of people want women to be punished, for their transgressions, and are more forgiving of a guy.
Great call out, Dave. You're absolutely right. That's where it probably comes from. So I hope some folks will realize that and like maybe rethink that, because yeah, man, like it's very clear in Star Trek Picard that she's nuts because of this mind meld. Like she's like totally crazy because of it and goes temporarily insane. And so like, why are you so hard on this character? That's a great call out, Dave. Thank you.
I am glad they touched on it. I don't think we
but I expected
more
that,
time with it, but I am glad they said, "Oh yeah, I went to trial. They found
and
me
they
not
acquitted
guilty."
you." But of course they were gonna acquit you. Like, you know, like I mean, I like that they touched on it, but it was unnecessary. I mean, even without it, like I would have assumed she'd be acquitted. You know what I mean? Like I think it would have been safe to assume. And again, we would have. How many people has Worf killed? In the heat of passion and like, you know, so yeah, I'm on Dave. You touched on something that I think is true.
The number of people Worf has killed who are lying on a biobed unable to defend themselves. I guess sort of his. Well, that's a spoiler for Dave.
Let's not spoil these.
There's the Romulan that he refuses to give the transfusion to in Next Generation.
Yeah, in TNG.
But again, he doesn't actually kill him. He just refuses to go to sickbay and give a transfusion.
In general, mind control is a reasonable get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
No, I was fine with how it was handled.
Go ahead.
I guess before we move on too much, I wanted to say I loved the recreation of the opening of Star Trek: The Next Generation credits, where they pull back from Earth and you see the Earth and then the Saturn and Jupiter and then the nebulas going by, and then you see a starship come up, and I was like, oh wow, and then the space gets ripped open and everything.
Oh, I didn't particularly notice that. I'm so familiar with the various powers of 10 variants, but I forgot that's how they do it in TNG.
Yeah. So that was absolutely what they were doing, and I was like, nice. I appreciated that.
I was very surprised at where everyone ended up, like from last season, but I also thought it was very fitting. Like I really think, of course, it made sense. I actually thought Rafi and like my prediction was going to be that Rafi and Seven and Elnor would all be together, like doing Fenris Ranger stuff. I thought that was fitting. So, but I liked that Elnor is joining Starfleet. That was cool.
You know what felt a little weird? This felt a little bit like military recruitment. Basically, everybody went full on back to Starfleet. What's
it reminded me of a
three people, right? So Elnor and Rios and Rafi all
Rios
went full
and
Starfleet.
Picard, effectively.
Yeah. Rios, Rafi, there is a justification though, I think, because Rios and Rafi and Picard, all of them kind of were disgraced a little bit and left Starfleet for all these reasons. So that made sense that when they saved the galaxy, that Starfleet would like go, hey, you know what? Maybe we're a little too hard on you. Let's give you that hero's welcome and let's reinstate you into Starfleet. Again, I was a little upset that Rafi didn't make captain like right away. It's I think that they gave Rios a brand spanking new ship. I'm sure Picard had a hand in that, like putting him on Stargazer, but I was a little upset that Rafi wasn't a captain. So
I think the audio drama kind of apparently has her saying no. So whereas Rios probably went to captain very quickly after, or went to Starfleet very quickly after the events of season 1, and thus had a year or so under his belt to get promoted to captain. Rafi apparently kind of continued her lone wolfiness up until significantly later in those 2 years that seem to have passed.
I like that it's going to be about 2 years.
So she didn't have as much time to earn promotion points as, so she's probably still at commander. And they gave her a ship. That's pretty good. It's not like she's got nothing. A command of a ship in Star Trek is generally viewed as a more prestigious accomplishment than being admiral, honestly. But
right.
Go
ahead.
And since they didn't say it, I'm assuming that Rios didn't fly out all the way out to the middle of nowhere to pick up Girardi, but instead used a subspace transporter. because we know they have them. So,
Brian's favorite piece of tech will emerge.
yes, yeah. Well, I mean, it makes way more sense than flying all the way out there to pick her up at this.
Don't we see the ship though orbiting that planet though?
No.
And then no, we don't. Oh, that's really cool. I like that.
Think so.
I don't know. Yeah,
I was watching the second time through because I was like, did he fly all the way out there, or did they use?
It's weird the assumptions we make. By the way, some folks are speculating that the planet that they were on, that those were the Deltans, but they're in the Beta Quadrant, and the Deltans are in the Alpha Quadrant, and they would be on Deltar or Delton or whatever. And
I thought it was formerly known from like one of the writers or something like that. I know that Memory Alpha, I think, does identify them as Deltans, and there's a credit I saw for something that says like handsome Delton or whatever that Girardi talked to. So maybe that's all that their people are keying off of. But maybe a Deltan colony? I don't know.
Oh, good. I like that. Yeah, Deltan colony. Wow, man. Let me tell you, that's got to be an interesting place.
Always jumping.
And it looks like Girardi's immune to the effects of the Deltans. Like she was able to stave off his sexiness. So that was interesting. Anyway, so they get
that's a lot. That's an extreme level of awkwardness, I guess.
So Girardi and Rios say hi to Seven, and a signal emerges from the I keep saying rapture. What's wrong with me? From the rupture. A chorus of voices in numerous languages asking Picard for help. Starfleet asks Picard to help them investigate the rupture. The Admiral reveals the message also carries a copy of Article 15, a request to join the United Federation of Planets. Picard departs as Laris arrives to an empty house.
So I'm thinking at this point, how do they know it's that Picard? It could be any Picard. They're going to get up there and then, oh, this is not the Picard we wanted.
Come on.
It's got to be lots of Picards.
You're being cheeky. You're being cheeky on
come
purpose.
on. How does Starfleet, realistically, know, oh, they definitely want this guy? Out of
he
all
just
the
said
Picards,
I'm the last Picard in the whole
because
universe.
He was Locutus.
Yes.
But they don't know it's the Borg at that point.
Yeah, they don't know it's the Borg, but still.
If they knew it was the Borg and they're asking for Picard, then okay, yeah.
That's just drama. If they went like if the message had gone instead of the ominous "we help us Picard," if it had said "help us Picard, comma Jean-Luc," it's just not the same. That's all. That's all it was.
I mean, I don't know if it would have been any less creepy if they'd said Jean-Luc, help us Jean-Luc Picard, but which would
it's just short and punchy.
Which still probably would have had a lot of Jean-Luc Picards, but at least there would have been at least you could at least narrow the field down to, well, this guy saved the galaxy several times, and none of the other Jean-Lucs have, so probably that one.
Sohail, could you pull up Geek Filter's comment on Sally Picard?
Sally.
There we go. And for those who cannot see this, the quote is, "We asked for Sally Picard. Who is this human? Bring us Sally. Comply."
I love that.
Yeah, that's nice.
And then Linda Mark says, "There can be only one Picard."
That's
true.
Right.
He does say, "I'm the last Picard," so maybe
everybody else in the galaxy has to change their name.
I mean, nobody else. Starfleet doesn't know that the Picard show is being made. Keep this in mind.
Well, Brian, assuming that they put two and two together, as Boatwreck is saying, and they like figured this has got to be the Picard they're talking about.
Other mental image. We've brought 500 Picards that we could get our hands on quickly, all out in a starship, just in case we don't know which one they want.
So yeah, they rush. So they rush off. Just a quick note on this scene: the Admiral who comes to see him is an alumni from TNG. I forgot the character she plays again, but she played, I think, like the transporter chief in the episode when Chief O'Brien. They're saying goodbye to Chief O'Brien or something like that, and so she's now a different character. She's not playing the same character, but I think it would have been cool if that character was an admiral. But it's all right.
It seemed like they could have done that.
It's pretty cool. What did you all think about Jean-Luc jumping back into duty and Laris, like, coming in just a little too late to see him off.
Didn't Laris basically say, I'm leaving, I can't stick around now, it's too awkward? So there was no particular reason for Picard to think she's going to come back. So he's under no obligation to leave a note or even phone her up necessarily.
Oh, I didn't read it like that. That's interesting because that's probably what it is her coming back from after she says goodbye. I read it as like, well, she was going to leave eventually, but what happened was she was like out running errands and she was going to come back home, and so he didn't bother to like.
Yeah, I'd have to go watch the leaving scene again. I don't remember. Exactly.
I do think you're right, though. I do think you might be right that maybe she changed her mind, but now she's kind of stuck with Chateau Picard again. She's like, damn, the Admiral left again. Now I have to take care of this place.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's worse things. Oh no, I'm running the vineyard.
Yeah, I'm running the vineyard.
She clearly likes it. So.
Yeah, and I kind of want that gig. It's like I wanted her and Zhaban to inherit the chateau in season 1. I wanted there to be like a little epilogue. I assumed he was, he was going to give it to them, but yeah.
Whereas Picard's off there smoking a cigar saying, I love it when a plan comes together.
It is a little bit weird them being the servants and stuff like that. There's just something a little bit odd about it. It feels aristocratic.
I feel that the optics of it look that way, but the actual what it actually is a partnership or a co-op, and I don't think that it works that way. But I do think because he's older, there's a natural sense for the younger members of the team to want to take care of him or look after him. Yeah. And so that's the vibe that I get. It's more of a caretaker vibe than a butler vibe or a housemaid vibe. But Yeah. And she happened to have fallen in love with him, which happens often. We see it all the time. Anna Nicole Smith, but or whatever. so it can happen. Shall we carry on to the?
I did have one other thing.
Yeah, please.
At this point in the show, like I said, almost everything that happened in this episode was not what I was expecting. Even having seen the trailer, which I felt was kind of spoilery, I was like, oh, this is all completely different. At this point, I'm like, well, I know Q shows up. Is it the Q asking for to join the Federation? So that's what I was actually leaning on as we went forward from this point, was the Q and of course they'd ask for Picard if they wanted to join the Federation. They'd start with Picard. Cisco would punch them in the face. So, it's got to be, and Vash doesn't have any authority. So of course you'd ask for Picard if you were the Q continuum wanting to join the Federation. But
that's true.
But I was completely wrong, but I was just I thought that would have been an interesting direction to go.
There's some wild theories when we get to that part that I'll share that I've seen that are interesting. But Aaron points out, yes, in the comic books, Laris and Zhaban had a Romulan wine vineyard, so that was their profession. So they know a thing or two. Yeah, they know a thing or two. And earlier, there's an interesting point that Fun will commence is saying is they made the cast work in pairs for the most part. The actors have discussed this interview. I imagine that's like part of the COVID protocols and stuff like that. So, anyways, any other thoughts on this scene?
No.
All right, so Starfleet quickly amasses a sizable task force to confront the Borg, including Rafi's 120-year-old Excelsior.
All right, strike that.
Right. Yes, that's wrong. Oops, I can't see. You're doing the highlight thing. The Borg. You're doing it on purpose. Brian's like, I'm just gonna highlight where, and Starfleet Boy is gonna go. He's doing it again. You guys, audience, you can't see this, but it's driving me nuts. The Borg say they are sending their queen to negotiate. Oh, so the Borg emerge. They say they're sending the queen to negotiate. The Borg break down the shields and beam a strangely garbed queen to the bridge, where she asks to negotiate and begins assimilating the ship. She says, "We want peace, but first power." And so, assimilating the ship's computer and power systems. This leads up to the opening of the episode. The Queen stuns everyone who attacks her and begins remote infecting the computers of all the other ships in the task force. Picard sets the Stargazer for self-destruct, and he hears his mother. Oh, he also hears Edith Piaf singing that wonderful French song, "No, yeah, no, yeah," and then he hears his mother. Picard sets the Stargazer self-destruct, and he hears his mother telling him to look up. Picard finds himself in. Well, we'll talk about that in a second. But anyways, so yeah, and then boom, the fleet's destroyed. We fade to white. Before we talk about the next scene where he ends up, how awesome was that sequence? To me, I was just very impressed with.
You're talking about the infiltration of the bridge.
Everything, yeah, the whole shebang. The fleet showing up, like the anomaly, the protocol, the Yonic Borg ship in its full glory entering, through the anomaly, like this new kind of Borg ship, like
I
just
think
all of it. Yeah.
My only complaint about it was that I felt like Starfleet really needs to work on not having prefix code issues. You shouldn't just be able to take over a ship from somebody else's ship. It seems like a flaw.
They do say in that scene. By the way, we see a new shuttle too in that scene. The whole work up to this scene, we start with the shuttle. Oh, kitty.
Sorry, my cat's in my lap. He's hungry.
We're almost done. We're gonna wrap it up. But if you want to quickly go feed Kitty a little more, that's fine. But real quick, so the scene working up to that, Picard and Seven are walking to the bridge, and she notes that there's Borg technology in this ship, so it must have been easier for the Borg Queen to take over. Now, right. I heard some folks are saying we're not sure that this is the Borg at all, even though it's a Borg ship or a Borg style ship, because apparently the subtitles say Legion when the Borg Queen is starting. Is that like some way to refer
I did see that in the subtitles. I think I looked up, I googled Borg and Legion, and I got an entry on Memory Alpha that I didn't look at closely, but it seemed to indicate that was maybe just like the collective term for the Borg. I don't know. I played Mass Effect, and there's a character named Legion, so I got confused based on that.
Yeah, it's clearly a Mass Effect crossover. I don't know why anyone would argue differently.
Well, I'm assuming it's the Borg for now, and if it is the Borg, I loved this reintroduction of the Borg. I loved like the new design of the ship, and I especially enjoyed the Queen in the Iron Mask, with a cape and like this like scary fencing mask or whatever, like with the gears switching. And I enjoyed some of the interesting differences. And, like I love Girardi says like, well, this is different, but she stuns everyone. She's not killing anyone. What's that all about? She's not. She wants to take this fleet for something. There's some kind of urgency. Your time is running out. So again, not knowing anything, it's kind of crazy. This is totally unexpected behavior from the Borg. It's not like their MO at all. It's very different. I'm very intrigued. It was an awesome scene.
Yeah, I mean, the big question of this scene is the Borg actually wanting to join the Federation and just has absolutely terrible social skills?
Well, I like to see the way
they don't understand boundaries. Like maybe they used all their power up getting through the hole, and they just are like, oh, well, I'm just going to drain some of your power to recharge my systems before all my drones start dying. And no, I'm not going to bother asking permission. I'm Borg. We don't really know we don't do that. And so they just have terrible social skills, and that's why they're setting for stun. Is they are vaguely aware on some level that humans get cranky when you kill a bunch of their people. So
I guess it's possible for both things to be true at once. They do want to join the Federation, and they're also because of the way they think, they're just like, we need to directly control this fleet and do something with it, and obviously, then they can admit us or whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, remember the Binars who couldn't accept.
That's exactly what I thought of.
Yeah, they who live by it's better to ask forgiveness than to ask for permission and get told no when they stole the Enterprise. I felt like, is that where we're going with this, and is that what we're going to end up leaping forward to finally when all of this plays out after all the timey-wimey stuff that goes on, is that Picard's going to be back in this moment, but this time he's going to say, no, we have to trust them and give them the power they need. They're not actually trying to kill us.
That would be a very consistent TNG type of thing, especially like a time travel event that teaches you something along the way that makes you do things differently the next time you're faced with that. Yeah, I think that's interesting. I see some of that in there. Any thoughts, Dave, on this sequence?
Let's see. I like the sequence, but I think I was a little. It's those action adventure-y things. Like I thought it was a little bit. Like them showing up all at once with the fleet is such a kind of cinematic moment.
I assumed that was like 3 days later, the fleet is amassed, and then we continue the story.
I mean, you see them warping in, I guess. It felt like they were all hitting kind of about the same time.
Yeah, but they kind of have a commercial break, so if you want, you can assume there was a few days
I guess
where
that's
the fleet
true.
got there, but I don't know if that
I don't think it was a few days, but maybe a few hours.
I mean, maybe this is 25th century Starfleet. Maybe they all do warp 13 now, so they.
Well, I mean, so you said 2 years past, Soji could have given the secret of the conduits, like she did to Rios. The Borg conduits could be coming into play as well. Starfleet could have like a more advanced propulsion system. They might be using slipstream a little. There's a lot of things that could be going on. I mean, we have Protostar. We have like. All of this is kind of coalescing. I feel like Picard and Lower Decks and Prodigy are kind of all in the same neighborhood, and there's like a lot of reveals from each show that I feel like are going to kind of maybe could be useful.
Maybe they all have Protostar
drives or something. Who knows?
It'd be cool if they were to call some of that out. I kind of don't expect them to, but we are in a different era right now, and it'd be neat to see a little bit of conceptual crossover.
So let's talk about Q, guys.
Well, I did want to say one other thing.
Yeah, one more thing. Go ahead.
Do we think the Borg, why are the Borg asking for Federation membership? And does it have to do with species 8472?
Are we going to go there? That's interesting. That's interesting.
I
just met them recently too, so I know what you're talking about, fluidic space and all that. Ooh.
Yeah.
You met species 8472?
Yeah, on my Voyager watch. I'm only on season 5.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I meant by. You're like, oh, interesting.
Are you familiar with species?
Yeah, I am actually a little bit behind Sohail in watching Voyager. But it will be for like years to come. Who knows when I'll get around to it. But yes, I remember these guys just beat the ass of the Borg.
Yeah.
And kind of
necessitated an unusual partnership, I think, between the Starfleet and the Borg, right?
Yes, like the other time that the Borg asked Starfleet for help was species 8472. So
two wild theories that I saw was one, the Q are assimilated. The Continuum somehow got assimilated, and so that's an interesting idea.
Godlike assimilation, yeah.
Yeah, and then the other interesting idea I heard was that that is likely 7 of 9, and it would be interesting because she's so against them joining the Federation earlier. She's just like, shoot first, ask question later. So what if she's, and like, because I mean, it is a masked figure, we don't see the face, so like there's a possibility that could be
the altered 7 of 9 from the fascist universe,
or just from the future. I mean, like they did say it's temporal. So maybe it's from 7 from the future.
Though it's hard to excuse the terrible social skills if it's 7, R7, because R7 has spent time with humans and know that humans get really cranky.
Well, remember, there's
onto their bridge and hijack their ship.
There's two things at play. There's this time urgency, and then also remember when she hooked into the Borg ship, part of 7 left and it had to be given back. Like there was some sort of Queen protocol that takes over, and she's like, well, there's more for Annika to do, is what the entity or the Queen version of 7 says. She says, he says, are you going to assimilate me now, or something like that? And then she says there's more for Annika to do, and then disconnects. And that's when in season 1. So I have a feeling when you become, if the Borg Queen, if you're designated, rather, I think that's how it works. If you're designated the Borg Queen or that central node, your personality and all that gets taken over by the prime directive of the Borg, whatever that might be. So she may not be able to control herself. Yeah. So that was interesting. So those were the kind of wild theories. that were there. But I just like the whole tentacle Cthulhu weird, vibe that was going on. It was just like pretty cool. I liked it. I liked all that imagery, and it was weird how it was cool how they kept her blurred in the background and she's doing all her stuff while the action's going on, and you didn't get a great look at her until that close up of the mask changing and stuff. It was neat. So shall we talk about Q?
Yep.
And wrap it up. Okay, I'll just say here it says Picard finds himself in an alternate version of his home in France, and Q appears. Mon Capitan. I loved the appearance of Q. I loved that they had him de-aged to be the Q as we last remembered him, more or less.
It's very neat how they did that.
Very neat how they did that, and I have to say it was the best version of that I've seen. Like, it's better than Luke Skywalker. The lips moved very naturally.
They did it so quickly, I think, and that was the smart thing, is they didn't give it enough time to fail.
Yes, exactly, and it looked great. I love the updated Q flash. It had like some interesting like little things going on in it, and just cute. Like, that was great.
I think because I'd seen somebody talk about this, but like in some, like, just a screenshot from it like weeks or months ago. They're like, Q's daddy now. Like, I feel like that whatever anybody who ships him and Picard, whether or not anything happens on the show, very unlikely. The fanfic just got like a new rejuvenation, I think. It is funny that something like a phrase like "Mon Capitan" should be like this iconic thing where everybody sees it and they're like, yes. And I used to not like Q, and I took him in the same vein as sort of pests in the comics, like in Superman comics, Mr. Mxyzptlk, and or Batmite over in Batman, these like very powerful little imps or whatever who are just kind of there to give plot ideas to very powerful characters. And I didn't used to like him. I warmed to it like I did so many TNG things over time, and so I was very excited to see him again. I actually really liked it.
Yeah, how do you guys think he's going to come into play?
I haven't done much speculative thinking on this. He said the path not taken, right?
Welcome to the road not taken, or something.
That makes it sound like it's personal to him, the past that they're in. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the road not taken would be, other than the Picard dying from being stabbed in the lung.
This is where I'm being a little naughty, because I know
some stuff.
I just want to see what you guys think.
I'm afraid I don't have any good predictions to make because I haven't thought much on it. Yeah. Brian?
I guess just from a dramatic point of view, I think it'd be more interesting if Q needs Picard, as opposed to he's just decided to help Picard, or he's just decided to harass Picard. That Q needs something. I don't know if that's where we're going. There's no real evidence of that at this point. But
if it was just him being puckish again, I admit I'd be disappointed.
Yes.
There's got to be something a little bit bigger about it. He's dying. The Q have been absorbed by the Borg. One of those things, something is happening. He's got to put Picard through his paces to get him somewhere so that he understands the scope of the problem. And so he's not going to give away all of that stuff immediately. But whatever it is, needs to be more than just fucking around.
If there are stakes for Q, it becomes a lot more interesting. If there are no stakes for Q, nothing for him to lose, then it's not as interesting. So I guess that would be my only real comment about what I would like to see from Q, is that some sort of stakes. So it's not just him, as you say, being puckish.
Now, Starfleet Boy, if you'll just go ahead and reveal all.
Okay,
spoiler warning, here's the next episode.
So I'm going to sit on my hands, as I said, so I'm not going to participate in this part because I know too much and I know I'll slip. But it'll be
exciting to see that next episode and then talk to you maybe a little bit next episode when we talk about it. And you can say, what was most difficult to keep secret, or that kind of thing.
That's cool. I will just say that what you guys were talking about just now, though, inspired me a little bit. It doesn't have anything to do with next episode, but it reminded me of like when you said about Q coming back with stakes, like having some stakes and like, needing Picard. it reminds me a little bit about like the whole arc of Q and Picard in a way, because in TNG, like he really startles Q in that scene when he's like, how, like, when he quotes Shakespeare and he's like, what you're really afraid of, Q, is that we're going to become you one day. And then by the end in All Good Things, Q's like literally saying, Picard, for just a moment, you weren't just a human, a petty little being, and you figured it out. You figured out what was going on. You like transcended, and that may have been the first step in that. So I wonder if that'll come into play. That's like an interesting thought that you guys put into there, is like, what's going on in the continuum? Will we know, or will we find out? These are interesting things.
Maybe synthetic Picard is going to hyper evolve.
Interestingly, yeah, interesting. Or that's maybe how Soji comes into play. Who knows? Let's give some final thoughts, because we've kept the audience here for 3 hours, and you guys have stuck with us. So thank you so much. Like that's been really awesome. Brian, why don't you go first with your final thoughts on this?
I am going to echo my final thought that I've been saving is the one that Michael Stepniak has also pointed out. Why does Captain Rios keeps telling his men to stop firing, and they keep on shooting, making him one of the lamer main character captains in the history of Star Trek. If Kirk says stop firing, you can be pretty sure everyone's gonna stop.
It's because he smokes cigars on the bridge and they don't respect him.
Yeah, those guys are like, we're always getting his secondhand smoke. We're gonna keep shooting. Fuck him.
Yeah, I guess. I would
actually, I think like earlier on
times, and they make it very clear that nobody gives any fucks about what the captain's orders are in that scene.
I would not take, I don't know how like tongue in cheek you're being, but I like, because they showed him being pretty effective in his own command way earlier. I think that was just purely a dramatic device, because like she kept shooting and they got panicked and kept shooting. But like, I don't think we're supposed to infer from it he's a bad captain. I think he was probably supposed to be confident in his own slightly unorthodox style.
And there was a lot of chaos on the bridge. It is possible that like they're not,
like they couldn't hear him,
or they're just not listening. Like they're so focused on like trying not to get killed, and the Borg do strike fear into people's hearts, and I feel like that would make you a little crazy. And I have to say, this Borg was pretty menacing. Like, like if I saw that masked figure with tentacles, like,
well, she beamed right onto the bridge. They already knew that there was like extreme levels of power.
Yeah, I kind of got that why they'd start firing, but when the captain gives the order, you either are living in this world where,
I have the answer. Rios hasn't developed his Jean-Luc stop. Like he hasn't developed that command.
He hasn't put enough points in leadership.
Yeah,
yet?
He hasn't developed that one way, that yell, or that like that scream that Jean-Luc does.
A line must
like,
be drawn here.
Yeah. So it's like, that's what it is, right?
I see that Andrew Hayes says the new ship smell is gone due to his cigars.
You need a little pine tree hanging by the viewer.
They have to vent it every day.
Fog of War. Yeah, it's just the fog of war generally doesn't seem to affect Starfleet personnel when the heroic captain is in the room.
Yeah.
That I mean, realistically, would they keep shooting? Possibly, certainly.
It is a bit of an odd call. I don't know why they decided to do that when I don't think they're intending to undermine him.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that.
I think that was just maybe a little bit of directorial oddness or something, some editing that made it kind of look weird.
Yeah.
Well, y'all, thank you so much, audience. And did we get your final thoughts? Was the question that Michael asked? What about you, Dave?
My final thought.
Any final thoughts?
I honestly don't think I have anything else to say other than I'm intrigued by the mystery that they've presented. Liking seeing all the characters again. I kind of hope that we'll continue to see the present of the 25th century so that we can revisit Guinan at some point. I don't want her to just be there for that first scene, but if she is, that's okay. But I'd kind of like to see her again. Like to see maybe she could end up talking to Beverly. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I think I feel like we really had a good discussion about it, so I don't really have final thoughts except to say that I'm really freaking hype and stoked and excited about this season of Picard. I can't wait to see how it turns out. And
they did hit the ground running.
Yeah, they hit the ground running. It was pretty spectacular, is I guess the way to put it. Folks, if you love this channel, please subscribe. We found out that only about 20% of our listeners or viewers actually are subscribed. So if you don't mind, give us a subscribe here on Tex-Trek. Also, give this video a like. And if you want, share it as well. That would help out a lot. But anyways, that's it. There might be a Starfleet Boy After Dark a little later. I don't want to give an exact time, but between 11:30 and midnight. And then look out for the podcast on Monday. So live long and prosper, y'all. And we'll see you next week. Hold on.
I am the guardian.
Sorry.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek. And follow Fatheree on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you, and take